regular council meeting of Monday, April 8th, 2013. And we'll start off by calling the regular meeting of council to order and ask if there's any late items. Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under item 6A, Mayor's Report, we'd like to add the Nanaimo Fire Rescue Emergency Management Division Volunteers Assistance at the structure fire on St. George Crescent. We'd also like to add the delegation from Mr. Fred Taylor to item 8A, Fire Rescue Department Business Model Synopsis. And we'd also like to delete item 8G, number 1, unresolved building deficiencies at 5589 Clipper Drive.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Sorry, Councillor Bestwick, go ahead.
Your Worship, under other business 15C, I believe it is, just to add a notice of motion.
Actually, sorry, it'll be 14, under 14. Yes, we've changed it, sorry.
So that wasn't...
I'll call on, and it'll be a notice of motion, we'll call on you at that point, at the bottom of, yeah, thank you.
Adoption of the agenda
as amended. Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll go into the minutes of the hearing. Okay, seconder? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move straight down into presentations 5A, and Ms. Denise Taken, General Manager, Vancouver Island Conference Center, VICC, to provide a presentation regarding an update on operations. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Rattan, members of council. A very full house in the auditorium today, and those that are watching live today. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the VICC. Today I will touch on reviewing the financials, both revenues and losses. I've used a 3-year span just to show where we've come from after the sort of economic climate that took us at recession point. We'll look at the competitive set and revenues, the delegate days, touch briefly on our sales and marketing, to introduce our newest sales collateral, which is our new video. Then I'll discuss the true value of business events, and I'll close out with a few comments and reflections. So we're looking at the financials from 2011 to 2013. We show growth in 3 areas of revenue streams. The other market, which consists of administration 2% and food and beverage service charges, those are a revenue stream. Room rental and food revenues. We show AV at a lower revenue this year, and that's truly dedicated to a very large conference we had in 2012, which we will not see again this year. Their particular AV was $25,000 alone. We also have lower revenues in beverage. This particular year that's passed in 2012, we had healthier beverage revenues from certain conferences. We had ARMA, Shriners, Masons, and Lions, and what have you. So overall, our revenues remain slightly shy of last year, and I leave the possibility of increasing those revenues to my very capable event team. Our losses are higher than last year, and that I'm anticipating increased costs in technology, and I'm also anticipating increased costs in major equipment. Warranties have run out. Contract services have renewed, and some have increased. And this is the regular cost of doing business where we currently are. As we look at our competitive set, you can see we're positioned this year. Victoria shows a decline of 6.4%, and we show a decline of 2.4%. Still, we exceed Prince George and Peace in convention business. As we look at our delegate days, they also remain consistent. Victoria is down. We are down slightly. We had a very large conference in 2012, which was the BC Association, Aboriginal Association Friendship Centres, which brought 1,400 delegates to this particular venue and the Regional District of Nanaimo. Penticton happens to have them this year, and we will go back after them. But again, what's important to note again here with Delegate Days is from 2011 to 12, there has been an increase between all of the BC centres of 7.5%, as well as 1.8% over last year. So the impact to date, we had 24 conferences last year, and that brought in $8.7 million. 2013, we have 20 conferences on the books, and that will bring in $7.4 million. And overall, by year end, we will have impacted this region by $32,600,000. I wanted to bring forth the Grant Thornton feasibility study. I wanted to show you where we should have been had there been no economic decline and a hotel built adjacent to the facility. The expectation was that we would deliver these types of revenues within this window of time. You can see that when we opened in 2009, the economic decline did not quite affect us until 2010 and 2011. Generally, that would be the norm given conferences book 2 years out. We were able to catapult back up in 2012, and we're still sort of flatlining that for 2013. This study was also drafted with a hotel component, just so everyone's aware of the variance there. In sales and marketing, our objective this year is to pursue increased market share from the convention business folio. And as we've shown here, there is consistent growth, and this is good news for us. The sales and marketing team, we have 2 island-based sales managers. The objective is to maximize their business levels before we look at someone in a satellite position, whether they're in Vancouver or additional on-site. We have, they look after the BC, local, national, and international markets, and they're doing very, very well. They're capable individuals, and they surprise me every day. My sales coordinator, she manages one-stop shop, and she facilitates information from sales to event management, and event management details all of those sales, repeat business, and single-day events. Our plan for this year is to continue our face-to-face calls to Victoria. We go 3 times a year, face-to-face to the mainland, 2 times this year. We will be attending the Cando Conference in Winnipeg along with Nanaimo First Nations, and hope to encourage this conference to come to us for 2014. We will be partnering with NEDC and stakeholders locally to take the inaugural flight to Calgary to open up that market for us. And we are members of MPI, the Aboriginal Tourism Association, Convention Centres of Canada, CSAE, IPEN, TAVI, VIA, and the Chamber of Commerce. We will continue with our annual events, Fringe Festival, Santa's Workshop with DMBIA, and Festival of Trees with VIU. And of course, our website has been favored by our planners as being user-friendly and a great selling tool. And now I'd like to show you our new video that we will be utilizing for trade shows, and another selling tool. It will be up on YouTube and on our website tomorrow morning.
Great. good. Very
You like that?
Very nice indeed.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to continue on from here. This was something that came to me via some colleagues and friends through the academic environment. And I wanted to talk about something that I think is really important for Nanaimo, and that is understanding the true value of business events. In 2010, Professor Leo Jago of the DeHaan Institute spoke at the Boston Convention Partnership meeting at the Boston Convention Center and delivered a PowerPoint presentation based on a study conducted in Australia that focused on the true value of business events versus the traditional measurements that are calculated industry-wide. It was funded by the Italian Tourism Commission and initiated by the leaders in the business event industry. This study helped determine, by way of quantitative analysis, data collection, and surveys across the country, that business events drive enormous value to the economy, and that it's beyond tourism. Traditional measures, which we've discussed earlier, are delegate days, hotel room nights, economic spend, all those types of things, what they do. And while they're worthwhile to discuss, disclose, and dissect, according to Jago, upon review of this study, we're focusing on the wrong thing in the first place. The problem with these measurements alone is they understate the value and the range and variables and benefits. They understate the range of beneficiaries and often are challenged based on economic impact and the values of their deficits. The role of the business events enhances innovation. Research confirms that meetings and conferences are driven by motives and needs, developing and sharing of ideas, educating, informing, promoting, networking, socializing. All of these things change behavior and increase sales performance. The key outcomes are innovation, improved organization, performance, personal development, increased productivity, increased sales, new skills, and knowledge and awareness. These you cannot put a value to. The tourism impacts are obvious: direct spend, job creation, and infrastructure investment. This is the framework for enhancing innovation for face-to-face business events. This is why we have meetings and conferences, so that associations, conferences have academics, professionals, government, universities, medias get together and have outcomes that generate industry, media profile, knowledge dissemination, release of new research, collaboration. The same with corporate meetings and incentives, where collaboration and corporate plans and product promotion and motivation, team building, all part of that. Again, exhibitions, they have visitors, exhibitors, sponsors, trade, and of course you're dealing with export markets, future business leads, new products, and so on. And government meetings that host ministers, parliamentarians, bureaucrats, diplomats, and all of this media infused, of course. This encourages investment, brings business migration, and all sorts of things that are not easily quantified. The outcome, of course, is destination tourism outputs. These are the things that we calculate. These are the things we understand. Everything from hotels to airlines to event space to food and beverage services, transport, touring, and repeat visitation. So these relationships and innovations of business events, all of these relationships and innovations cultivated by these business events affect and influence delegates, employers, host organizations, pre and post collaboration, product launches, new products to market, science, technology, new knowledge, business development, destination development. We've seen all this here. All of these are a direct result of business events and conferences. To continue to ignore these facts and criticize these business models would be to deny that these things matter. Jago said the business event sector, which is an ongoing and high-yield component of the event sector, is the quiet achiever of the sector and has not received adequate recognition for its contributions. So what's the problem? Well, to be taken seriously as an economic driver for more than the tourism destination outputs factor. And the solution is recognizing that business events and conferences be an investment. Because by understanding the dimensions that underpin and drive value beyond the delegate spend is key to attendees, employer organizations, tourism, sharing of local and international expertise, fostering innovation, sales, and investment. Means to understand, as Jago says, that the enormous value of contribution is to the economy. These are the key messages that need to be taken away today regarding this study. Meeting and conventions generate uniquely high-yield economic benefits and attract influential visitors. This has happened and does happen. Meetings generate a wide variety of other economic and community benefits. Meetings and conventions generate incremental tourism, we know this. Meetings and conventions promote the profile of a city or a community or a region and its role in national and international affairs. Meetings are directly connected to the key issues of the day, and they play an important role in building better understanding amongst different groups and countries throughout the world. My team, some of my members of my team are in this room, and there has been, a tremendous amount misunderstood. It's important to remember that while this building is but bricks and mortar, its character, charm, and reputation has been built by flesh and bone. There's been a tremendous amount of negative media. As I close out, I would like to touch on this. It has greatly affected our business. We have had to salvage 2 conferences and ensure that one that did sign just recently had made the right decision to choose Nanaimo. No one wants to visit a community that has controversy. Nanaimo is young on the world stage. It has much to experience, enjoy, and pass on to the younger generations. It has brilliant minds, beautiful aesthetics, charming downtown, and friendly people. We cannot lose sight of these natural gifts. Nanaimo needs to remember that not everything that is written is accurate, and certainly some of which is just nonsense. But above all, and in light of that, Nanaimo needs to come together as a community that encourages its young, fixes what is truly an error, and prevents the written tongue from dividing its people, all people. The future of Nanaimo deserves better than that. I thank you for your time and opening the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very interesting presentation. We have a couple of questions. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cohn, very much. I want to start off by commending you and your team for pretty amazing work that you do under very difficult circumstances, and you've done that for a long time. I'm aware of that. The events that have happened of late maybe give you a bit of an inkling what we as a council have to put up with on a much longer and regular basis as well. That said, the conference center is still not performing to what we needed to be and what we wanted to be. And so I'm wondering if you would answer me 2 questions. The first one is, the economic benefits that you've quoted of almost $8 million for this year. Who computes that and under what circumstances? Who does it? Where do you get those numbers?
There is a standard formula set by Convention Centres of Canada. This formula takes the number of delegates multiplied by the number of days and adds one additional day to that formula to give a value per conference. The actual formula for Convention Centres of Canada adds an additional day, assuming that a guest arrives the day before and leaves the day after. We do not do that. We are conservative in our numbers because we believe that one day is applicable either way, here halfway through the day and leaving the next day, half day. Our numbers would be probably a little different, a little higher. We are starting to calculate that just so that we have an understanding of where we fit within that particular formula. But we have been conservative so that we are not sending out any sort of misinformation or inflating anything that we think would actualize.
Okay. One follow-up, if I may. When we look at the numbers that you showed for Prince George and Penticton, both up, am I comparing apples or oranges, or why is it that they are up and we're down?
Penticton we basically share the different groups that rotate around the country. Penticton has picked up our top account for this year, and of course that's natural because they need to move around BC. So that's why their numbers have moved up. Prince George, I think, has shown business growth and development in that region, and that's starting to actualize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, like my colleague, would like to echo his remarks about how hard we know you worked over the course of the years, you and your staff, Mr. Khan, and congratulations to you. I recently worked on a conference bid to bring to Nanaimo for the British Columbia Parks Recreation Association, and they loved our conference centre. They thought the staff was extremely professional and would have come to our city had it not been for the fact they could not get enough hotel rooms. Although there are enough hotel rooms in our community, they didn't want to bus their delegates from the hotels to the center. Could you say to me, what is the average block of room nights you can get from say the Coast Bastion Hotel in the Dorchester? I know they won't give out a lot of rooms. They like to maintain them for their commercial travelers.
There's two things going on. One, they have to have a certain inventory for their own base business. They are also sourcing group business, which will require blocks of rooms. And so they efficiently give us the best they can in terms of the timeframes to which these particular conferences are interested in. The second problem is we're all vying for the same business at the same time. In other words, not necessarily the same clients per se, but business at the same time tends to actualize between mid-January through till June and mid-September through till mid-November. And so if you take out the remaining months, then you have more opportunity. Getting conferences to come in those months is difficult. So we're all looking after the same inventory, or looking for the same inventory at the same time.
Right. Good. Thank you. Follow up, if I may, Your Worship. British Columbia ferries and their ever-increasing rates. Is that a factor in losing some to the interior?
I think we have shown some information on that regard, yes. We've had some people say it is better for them to stay on the mainland, wherever that is, just due to the ferry costs. So we are very creative in trying to bring them forward and bring them here. We do our best to make it palatable as far as costs and so forth. We are, bound by certain restrictions and so forth. But I think, yes, there may be some element of truth in that question.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Good presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Looks good. It's okay.
Okay, sorry, I missed Councillor McKay. Slipped in, I didn't look up, so.
It's easy to do.
Okay. Councillor McKay, you're on first, I'm sorry.
Thank you,
But I'll ask that you say that again.
Save that thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. To echo what Councillor Pache has suggested, that you know, we're all probably disappointed in the overall performance relative to what the studies originally said. So we rely on economic generation to determine success. So can you give me what your multiplier is per delegate to come up with your economic benefit?
It's $315 per day.
315. So if I was to calculate that, is that every delegate that comes into the building?
That is just conference related. There's a difference. We have delegates for conferences or overnight stay or multi-day events, and we have participant days. Participant days encompasses every single person that walks through this door. Delegate days absolutely only earmark those that are here as overnight guests.
Great, thank you. Supplemental, Your Worship. Presumably, you know, you've got to go far afield with your sales team. Can you tell me what your budget is for external of Vancouver Island for sales and marketing?
I'm really glad you asked that. Despite popular belief, we do not have a budget of $750,000 a year annually. We have a budget that ranges just over $100,000. We base our spend in particular markets, particularly the mainland, per trip and per salesperson. And they will not go over unless, of course, it's worthy of them to do so. So the costs will vary anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500 tops.
So, for example,
per visit.
Certainly, thank you. So, for example, any major conferences relative to conventions, if you will, for example, the Tete-a-Tete in Ottawa, you would attend that, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part there.
The major conferences that are attended by all the conference centers across Canada, you would attend all of those?
No, actually, I have attended Convention Centres of Canada once, but I have felt in the last 4 years that revenues didn't merit to go, and I have asked for all minutes and all information that was discussed and disclosed at those meetings.
Thank you.
Councillor Kitt.
Thank you.
And Ms. Taken mentioned she wanted you to start with that same lead.
Yeah, no, I thought the video was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
it has been a tough economy. What is Smurf marketing?
It is an amalgamation of social, military, education, religion, and fraternal markets, all in one.
Oh, Smurfs.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Thank you. And the true value on a business event, what do you class as business event? What the explanation like next to your business event? So is that like a mystic coming down doing a presentation here or somebody like that?
It can, if there's technology involved, yes, but really related to business meetings, conferences, seminars, trade shows where there's interaction between people. They're there to learn, they're there to teach, educate, and so forth.
Now, and if I can follow up too, the magic number currently is around conferences about 400 people? Is that the magic number right now for multi-days?
Yes, I mean, we target everything that we think a particular market will bear. And, you know, we've had some really great successes from sales. Sales has been able to achieve, we've just sold for next year a 600-person delegate conference, a 500-person delegate conference. So these are very optimistic numbers. It's terrific. But we're still in the 350, 400 range, yes.
But you did host one with, I think, 1,000 delegates
1,408.
for the Aboriginal Youth Convention.
They were everywhere, and it was
around
wonderful.
400 is our magic number right now. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for asking.
Councillor Bessy.
Worship. Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. I appreciate the presentation and the heartfelt presentation that you made.
Thank you.
I'm interested in much has been made of the hotel or the absence of an accompanying or adjoining hotel. And in the event a hotel was adjoining, and we spoke earlier about hotels having to retain a certain amount of their inventory for their ongoing and consistent basis. So if we had a hotel with approximately 150 rooms in it, adjacent, is it reasonable to assume that that would increase our our capacity for the conventions to approximately 500, so the magic number being 4. Is 100 rooms a reasonable number?
I think that that is, a great start. I mean, I will be very honest with you. And I look at all of our competitors. Victoria has 6,100 rooms. Prince George has 2,000. We're working within a capacity in the downtown core of anywhere from 400, 450 rooms at best. And, and that really depends on availability, and we won't get that whole inventory neither. So, another product would be lovely, another product after that as well, and it continues. Do I know the magic number? I do not, no.
So is it fair to say that an additional hotel might increase our capacity to 450 or 500 in view of what you just stated?
Yes, I think that we would be able to lure them based on a number of principles. One being that a lot of delegates do prefer a close proximity to where they're lodging. That umbilical attachment is very important. And of course, another fresh product, a quality product, helps to sort of elevate the region, particularly if it has brand awareness.
Thank you. And my last question, Your Worship. And you mentioned at the outset that a hotel would contribute to, in a large part, the $800,000+ shortfall that of the forecast in the Grant Thornton report.
Mm-hmm. It would help.
So the 100 rooms on average times however many more overnight conferences we would receive would make up the lion's share of that $800,000. Am I putting that in the right context?
You know what? It's really hard to say. I would say that it would definitely advance us into the right direction. We've all felt the effects of the economy and its decline in the last few years. The Grant Thornton report was written and brought to light in 2004. We're in 2013. I suggest that maybe another optic lens towards it would be a fruitful venture.
A lot has changed since then.
I just want to add that I think that it's unrealistic to think that that deficit is going to go away. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is a valid objective to reduce it, but the conference center, all the conference centers I'm aware of, all operate at a deficit. So the main advantage of another hotel is to have more delegate days and more economic spin-off to the community. There'll always be, in my opinion, there'll always be a substantial deficit to operate this facility.
I would assume, though, that if we did have a larger capacity and therefore larger conferences, that it should have a positive financial impact for the city, but it probably won't go too far in changing the shortfall we're now anticipating.
No, it won't. And, I do speak often with my counterparts across the country. Our closest product to us was the conference center built in Fredericton in 2010. They share the same square footage, and they are currently looking to recruit a hotel developer development. They are given an annual grant, for choice of a different word, at $950,000 every year, and that is just the way it is. So their budget is based on that being a part of the equation from the start. And so...
Can I ask, the grant, this $950,000 grant is from whom?
From the city.
From the city?
The municipality, yes.
Well, I see no further questions, and I want to thank you. Councillor Kipp, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, who built Fredericton? Did the city build it?
Yes.
The municipality, or
Yes.
was it a partnership?
No, as far as I understand, it was the municipality, yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, as I was going to say, thank you very much. And, I just want to comment that I think you and your staff are doing an incredibly good job under the circumstances. Some of the negative rhetoric that's out there right now is discouraging for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine it's challenging for your staff to try to keep motivated and enthusiastic about the product. And through it all, they have been. And I think they've done an extremely good job. And I just want to thank you personally, because I think you're on the right track, and given a strengthened economy and possibly a conference center hotel in due course, yes. Things will only improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, the next item on the agenda is item 6A, Mayor's Report. And I just wanted to mention that last weekend, Easter Sunday, at 6:06 p.m., the city's fire department attended a structure fire at St. George Crescent. This was a serious fire which left many families unable to return to their residence due to the damage caused by the fire. Nanaimo Fire Rescue, through the Emergency Management Division, has volunteers that get dispatched to every fire to assist with victims and provide aid through provincial programs for shelter, food, and clothing for 72 hours following the fire. As part of this call out, and as is typical of any call for volunteer assistance, they often leave their own families to assist others in need. On this particular occasion, the CAP volunteers were sitting down for Easter dinner with their families when we requested their assistance. Those dispatched spent from 6 p.m. to midnight Easter Sunday and assisted us in several days following by processing and advising victims from this fire. The volunteers made themselves available and did whatever was required to support the fire department and emergency management and are invaluable in my estimation and go beyond what is typically expected from volunteer groups. On behalf of Council, I want to thank you for your commitment to our community, and I want you to know how extremely grateful we are to have such wonderful volunteers supporting us in times of need. In the case of the most recent fire, on behalf of Council, I want to recognize the following volunteers who came out to lend support to those in need. And it was Wayne Hartley, Doug Creva, Tom Whitlam, Deanna Olson, Leslie Marcotte, Sue Luoma, and Brad Luoma. So thank you to all the volunteers, and we're truly blessed to have you in our community. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. You know, it's only when you have to go through a major loss like a significant fire of this type that you really know how important it is to have help at that time. Now, next item is item 8A, Community Safety and Development. The Fire Rescue Department Business Model Synopsis, and the presentation will be by Chief Lambert, and I think Mr. Kenning, the City Manager, will lead us in.
Just very quickly, Your Worship, I wanted to say that this presentation serves two purposes. One, it's a review of one of the major categories of the city's budget, the fire rescue service. And also, it's a preliminary response to Council's request to undertake a review of the fire plan that was developed in 2005, so 8 years ago. And the review was to look at what's changed in that intervening period and whether the plan should be amended. And Council subsequently asked that the review include a review of the question of four-person engines and whether the fire response is meeting Council's needs in that regard, and also to look at the paid on calls and the service they're providing to the community and whether that could be enhanced. So saying that, I want to pass it over to Fire Chief Lambert, who's going to introduce a presentation from the consultant.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I'd like to explain the presentation tonight. There's a lot of work that's gone into this since Council made the motion back in October. And for the most part, what we've done is an extremely comprehensive review of our incident data over the last 3 years. And we've taken that data and compared it to the 2005 data and came up with an analysis of whether trends are changing, staying consistent, so on and so forth. So the first part of the presentation is a very quick snapshot of the information that's before you, I think on pages 35 to 67 of your agenda. And then we'll follow up with the business model, the integrated risk management approach that's being proposed. The recommendations that we're asking Council for tonight is to receive the information, receive the presentation as information, and the next one is to have us move forward and consult with stakeholders, both internal and external. And finally, the third one is, I'm sorry, we will present the business model in middle of May, at a convenient time in May. So we'll start off with Maybe grab me the clicker, Craig. We'll start off with the response data analysis report. So very quickly, I'll run through some of these slides and the content of the report, make a couple of observations, and more towards some of the critical points that we currently have. The first slide that's on the screen right now is the department workload. And for the most part, it's made up of emergency medical incidents. 64.5% of our business is associated with medical. So if we compare that to 2005, what we found is that there's actually a 76% increase over that period in time in medical incidents. So we've gone from 53.5% of the total back in 2005 now to 64.5. Confusing my numbers. The rate per thousand has gone from 30.30 to 48.16. So it's certainly a significant increase in our workload. In contrast, the other influence on workload that's increased the number of calls, and I'll actually show you in the next slide how the incidents have increased over time. But we're doing motor vehicle incidents and a number of minor motor vehicle incidents where we assist the victims in managing the incident, directing them to their insurance companies. And if there's injuries, of course, we deal with them, call in additional resources, and if there's criminal intent, we would notify the RCMP. So by and large, the workload, it's interesting because the fire department, historically we've been looked at it to respond to structure fires. And the interesting part is that that's only 1.7% of our total workload right now. The next slide is associated with our the longer term trend. Back in 2005, we were, a forecast was made by the consultant at the time that by 2024, we would have roughly 9,000 emergency responses each year. If we look at that and compare it to what our incidents have been from 2007 to 2012, you'll notice that the two graphs, or the chart and the graph, correlate with each other. So we're basically right on track with the forecast that was established back in 2005. The next slide up there is represents workload by the specific unit in the department. So engine 1 is the engine that's downtown, and certainly it's the busiest region, followed by the area out in number 2, which is the central part of the city near the golf course, followed by Woodgrove area, and then the Chase River area. So what this graph actually does two things for us. Number one, it demonstrates the workload. In addition to that, if we look at the unit utilization, and this is by hour, what we find is that if we took a day, one full day, we would find that the units are being utilized less than 10%. So roughly, I think it was 8.5 for engine 1, which is the busiest engine. The next thing I wanted to discuss, and this goes back to the response performance targets that we've talked considerably in the past. This is a reflex time model, and it starts off with detecting that an emergency is occurring, reporting that incident, and when the 911 phone rings, that's considered our dispatch period. And from that point to the time we arrive on scene, we term that response time. So these are fairly important elements in respect to level of service to the community. The dispatch time, council's adopted out of the 2005 plan, or 2005 study, and incorporated into the fire plan that dispatch time is done within 60 seconds, 90% of the time. Turnout is 60 seconds, 90% of the time for medical incidents, and 80 seconds where personal protective equipment is required to be donned. Travel time is 4 minutes, which gives us a total response time of 6 minutes, which is the primary target that we want an engine on scene first for. The problem we have, of course, with the response time in the city of Nanaimo, given its geographical nature, is that a lot of the peripheral areas can't and won't receive that level of service. So this, based on response performance, this is one of the reasons why council has directed us to look at the response performance, look at the fire plan, and make some determinations into the future. Just breaking down that response performance time, you can see on the top table from 2010 to 2012, we've gone from 64.32% meeting the target to 74.15 in 2012. So there has been some improvements, and I'll point out where those improvements have come shortly. The other graph is associated with total, our average and 90th percentile. So if we actually took the time of 90% of our fastest responses, what we would find is that they're 7 minutes and 30 seconds for medical, 9:24 for fire, and for all incidents, 8:03. And there's an explanation within the documentation. So dispatch processing time, again, our response target was 60 seconds, 90% of the time. And this is staying fairly consistent. We're doing a fairly good job in the communication center. And that's with dispatching 27 departments from the Malahat to Nanoose. Our turnout time has improved over time as well. 2010, the response to structure fires was 41:31. That's increased now to 2012 to 59.25. And where personal protective equipment isn't required, it's now sitting at 60.80. Travel time has been relatively consistent, and there's some reasons for that. While there's been an increase in the peripheral areas, the addition of Station 4 has kind of balanced out the overall travel time throughout the community. So that number has stayed relatively consistent over the since 2003 till 2012. The next slide that I have is the full assignment, or what's known as concentration when you look at standards of coverage. And this is to get our 3 career engines on scene. And our target is 10 minutes, 90% of the time. And we meet that, meet that standard and do a pretty good job in that area. So this is building an effective response force to deal with a major incident that requires those bodies. So some key findings. All in all, we've assessed the recommendations that were provided in the 2005 study, and we've made significant progress to those recommendations to improve the response system. We've had an increase in workload and demand, as I've pointed out, increase in emergency medical incidents, particularly the percentage and the rate per 1,000 population. Now, the structure fires were a little harder to analyze, but there's actually a decrease in structure fires by percent of incidents. So that's taken all of our responses, so the number of structure fires is actually going down in comparison to all our responses. However, when we look at the rate per thousand, it's remained relatively consistent. There's also been a shift in the distribution of incidents as population increases in outlying areas. So as the population increases in those areas, so does the request for emergency incidents. There's a significant improvement in turnout performance. Back as a baseline based on 2003 to 2005 data, our percentile was 13.5% of the time. And now it's up to, what did I just tell you? It's sitting about at the 60th percentile. So a significant improvement with turnout time. And that's both technological and human factors that have increased that over time. And because of the addition of Station 4, we've increased or improved response performance. So that's a combination of Station 4 and increased turnout times. So the report is fairly comprehensive. I think for most, it's good sleeping material. A couple hours from now, you might want to read it and, and get a good night's sleep. So moving on with that, probably if I move forward and we'll introduce the consultant that's helped us put together some of the new business case and the integrated risk management model, Alan Nielsen.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Chief Lambert mentioned, my name is Alan Nielsen, and I work as a local government consultant throughout the province. I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of work actually with the City of Nanaimo over the past 13 or 14 years on various services and policy issues. My expertise is not firefighting. My expertise, or my specialty, if you will, is in the area of service delivery and reviewing services to ensure that they're as efficient and cost-effective as possible. My specialty is also in the areas of public policy analysis and in governance. So I come to this study, as I do to other service reviews, with that kind of bent, if you will. And I work with people like Chief Lambert and Deputy Chief Richardson, who are the experts in the particular area, to review the model to determine whether or not it can be improved and made more effective and more efficient. I'm here to introduce the Integrated Risk Management Model, a new business model, a proposed model for the City of Nanaimo Fire Department. The model presented here is in front of you in the form of a synopsis. It's going to be presented in more detail, as Chief Lambert mentioned, in about a month's time. Let me just give a bit of an overview, if I could, Your Worship. The Integrated Risk Management Model, it does represent a proactive and an integrated approach to fire services. It uses evidence to assess all types of fire, but also all types of health and safety risks in the community. It manages risks through targeted community-based reduction strategies, so prevention of risk, prevention of incidents, and also through flexible response to incidents that do occur. It organizes the fire department's human and physical resources into risk management zones, and those are organized in a way that best responds to the needs that we've identified through risk analysis. It measures outcomes, and then it adjusts as we go forward. It's designed to achieve Council's response time targets throughout the city, targets that Chief Lambert just referred to. It's also designed to reduce the number of fire, health, and safety incidents that occur, and also to reduce the severity of incidents that do occur, because incidents will always occur irrespective of our efforts to prevent them. There will always be some incidents. What we hope then is for those that do occur, we actually reduce the severity of them. The model is also designed to improve the overall health and safety of the community, which really is the core mandate of the department. It's designed to achieve the most efficient use of the department's skilled professionals and the support, that is the paid on-call contingent. It's designed to achieve financial sustainability and, put differently, to maximize the return on investment for the city's taxpayers. That gives an overview, Your Worship. Let me just get into a bit of the details now, if I could. The model was developed by Fire Management, Chief Lambert, Deputy Chief Richardson, the assistant chiefs, assisted by the consultant, that is me. It's worth noting that Council has made the chief responsible for the efficient management of all resources, and that's from the city's bylaw on fire service, on the delivery of the fire service. It's also worth noting that this model is supported by both the city manager and the senior leadership team. Finally, by way of introduction, it's worth noting, Your Worship, that the model is not new. It's new to Nanaimo, it's new to British Columbia in many respects, but it brings together ideas and best practices from fire services in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and across Canada. As I mentioned, Your Worship, the purpose tonight is simply to introduce the model in the form of a synopsis. Over the next 4 weeks, as Chief Lambert mentioned, our goal is to have some additional consultation with stakeholders, and in some cases, some new consultations with stakeholders, both within the department and outside, and then to return to Council in the first half of May with the full outline, which we'll present as a business case for the new model. So, the model, Your Worship, I'll go through these various boxes, if you will, and give a little bit of detail. Our first one here is the evidence-based risk assessment. The foundation of the new model is what we term an evidence-based risk assessment, and that is all hazards. So, for sure, we look at fire risks throughout the community. Those are important. Traditionally, our purpose as a fire department was to put out fires. So fire risk throughout the community remain an important part of what we do in assessing those risks. And our evidence-based risk assessment would certainly look at fire risks throughout the community. But much more than fire, as Chief Lambert mentioned, we've got a whole bunch of other risks out there. And we want to take an integrated approach and understand all of those risks, because protecting the health and safety of all persons in the city requires us to understand all those risks. And when I talk about all those risks, I'm talking not only about fire, but about medical, about structure collapse, about transportation disruptions, about telecommunications, about marine, about hazardous materials, all those kinds of risks that affect not only the fire department, but the city organization as a whole, other public safety organizations. The fire department in taking the lead in providing an assessment of all of those risks through this evidence-based assessment model would outline and identify the different risks that are out there in the community. And for all of those risks then, the model would explore a series of key questions. What is the risk posed? Why does the risk exist? In other words, what behaviors contribute towards the risk? Who is at risk, both in terms of demographic groups, also in terms of areas within the city? Because not all areas within the city are exposed to the same types of risks. Not all groups within the city are exposed to the same types of risk. Where is the risk higher?
Mr. Nielsen, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but we are starting to get some questions now, and I wonder, do you have a preference? I don't want to interrupt your presentation, to ask questions as they are formatted?
If it's all right with you, Your Worship, it might be easier if we just go through the model, and then some of the questions may be addressed as we go through. So,
fair enough. Thank you.
Where is the risk the highest? How does it rate in terms of priority? We have a series of risks. Where do they rate? How can we eliminate or reduce the risk? And then what level of response do we need to deal with those risks, particularly when those risks materialize into actual events, into actual incidents? Moving on, the foundation then being the evidence-based risk assessment, moving on then to risk reduction. And what's particularly important to understand is that when we look at our current, what might be termed the traditional fire service model, we have a disproportionately high proportion of our resources in response, that is, in responding to incidents that occur. We have very few resources by comparison in actually preventing incidents from occurring or reducing the risks that lead to incidents. Under the new model, we would have a balancing, if you will, a shift in resources from response to prevention. Now, response would not be left unattended. Response remains critical in this new model, but it's equally critical to focus on prevention, that is risk reduction. And when we talk about risk reduction, we're talking about targeted risk reduction efforts. So based on our all-hazard risk assessment, we know where the risks are going to be highest. We know what kinds of incidents, and we have this data, by the way, already in a lot of our materials. We know what kinds of risks are going to be highest where, what time of day they occur, when we need to respond to them, how we can prevent them, those kinds of things. So we target the areas of the city, the demographic groups of the city, the times of day, the types of behaviors that lead to these risks, that generate these risks and ultimately may lead to incidents. We know from others, and when I say others, departments in the UK, the US, across the country, we know from others that these targeted efforts result in significantly fewer incidents, that being one of our goals, to reduce the volume of the calls to which we need to respond. Demand management is kind of the concept here. You've probably heard about that in terms of transportation. How do we manage demand for our various services and transportation for our roads? It's the same concept here with our fire service. How do we manage demand for our fire services? And we manage demand through our prevention, our targeted prevention efforts, our risk reduction efforts. So we know from others that these efforts result in significantly fewer incidents. We look at the UK, for example. In the last 5 years in Liverpool, through targeted reduction, 28% reduction in absolute numbers in the number of call-outs they've had to respond to. Liverpool's been growing over that time, so on a per capita basis, the percentage is even greater. Those that do occur, we also know from others, are less severe because we've taken steps to mitigate the risk. Incidents may still occur, but through our mitigation, through our risk reduction efforts, the results are less severe. We know from others as well that the key to targeted prevention, targeted risk reduction, is community engagement. Community engagement is really a fancy way, if you will, of saying making the community a partner in providing the service and in protecting the health and safety of all citizens in Nanaimo. And we see this not only, this notion of engaging the community to become a partner is not only relevant in fire, it's relevant in all services that we provide as a city. We know that community engagement is achieved through education. From the efforts of others, the lessons we've learned, the best practices in other jurisdictions, we see that a range of programs can be created and targeted to key groups in the city and to key areas of the city. And those groups are then delivered, those programs are then delivered to small groups in different locations at times, in locations that those groups can access, but also to door-to-door. So we're talking about hundreds of door-to-door in targeted areas of the city to help them understand the risks that they're facing, to help them understand the behaviors they can change, to give them the tools to mitigate those risks and hopefully prevent the incidents. Firefighters, currently active in response primarily, with some prevention efforts, but not a lot, primarily in response. Firefighters would be active in program delivery, again, based on lessons we've learned in other jurisdictions. Firefighters know the community. They understand the risks and the behaviors that contribute to the risks, and in some cases to incidents. They're respected in the community. They're available. And when I say they're available, when we look at, over the past 2 years, the city has looked at, they've had firefighters actually record their workload, record their different tasks done over the course of shifts, and we can see that on the whole, for the department, both including all stations, all companies, night shift, day shift, we see well over 50% what might be termed downtime, available time. And that's time that, in addition to all of the training, all of the incident response, all of the maintenance, all of the tasks that need to be done, we've still got a large pool of time there that is available. It provides the capacity for us to engage firefighters in program delivery and helping to deliver and design, actually, the targeted prevention programs. What we see is a change in the role under this model of the firefighter from being primarily response to being what we've termed a public safety ambassador. This comes from Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue in their 2009 document. We must strike a new balance, both because prevention and response are equally important. By the way, the emphasis is in the original here. And we have to find ways to balance our resources to do both, even when we have fewer resources. So, firefighters of the future must see themselves both as safety professionals as well as fire and rescue professionals. I'll move on now, Your Worship, to risk-based response as another key component of this model. Your Worship, our traditional model of fire rescue is based on the notion that we need to staff ourselves, we need to equip ourselves with stations and apparatus to always be able to respond to a structure fire. As Chief Lambert mentioned, that this model, curiously, still has this approach, even though 1.7% of our incidents are actually structure fires. We also know that the percentage of serious structure fires is actually far lower. We know, incidentally, also that the 1.7% and the percentage of the serious structure fires are very concentrated in the city, in the areas served by stations 1 and 2. Under the new model, the new model recognizes that responding to all incidents as if they're structure fires or could develop into structure fires, based on our evidence, is neither necessary nor efficient. Nor is it efficient sending 4-member engines to incidents simply to ensure that they're ready to respond to a structure fire should one occur. The new model moves away from what we've got in place right now, which is a one-size-fits-all response model. It moves to a flexible risk-based response, where crew size and apparatus are matched to the type of the incident that occurs and based on the risk that we know. Under this new model, almost all of our emergency medical service calls would be handled by a 2-person crew. By the way, a lot of our medical emergency calls right now, about 1 in 5 from stations 1 and 2, are handled by 2-person crews. Most other types of incidents, including non-structure fires, would also be handled by a 2-person crew under this new model. Some key points to understand as we ponder this, because it is a change in how we have traditionally done things. First of all, we need to identify, using our risk assessment, using the evidence that we have, which calls require what level of response. We need to put in place the response and training protocols, for different crew configurations. They're very important to have those different training protocols in place for a 2-person crew versus a 4-person crew. We also need to point out that not all calls under the new model would be handled using a single 2-person crew. We would have as many people as we needed to respond to a call. If we needed to bring together 2 2-person crews or 3 2-person crews to respond to a structure fire, we would do that, and I'll show you how we'll do that in a moment. We would send, based on risk, based on the incident, we would send as many as needed, but not more. From a journal called Firehouse, a recent, this was November 2012 from the United States, not all calls for service require 4 responders. Identify which types of calls could be effectively handled with 2 responders. Such protocols should account for local circumstances and follow a risk assessment. This is not a one-solution-fits-all proposition. We also know, incidentally, that 67% of all U.S. departments in mid-sized cities use fewer than 4 persons on crews for response. Mid-sized cities, by the way, are cities between 50,000 and 250,000. Risk reduction and risk-based response fit together in our model, Your Worship, under risk management zones, and I'll describe those. First of all, it's important to understand that in our 2005 fire plan, and Chief Lambert gave us some updates from that plan, under our 2005 fire plan, the build-out model called for 7 stations in addition to Protection Island. Protection Island we've kept separate. That's obviously geographically separate from the main part of the city. It's a paid-on-call, solely a paid-on-call station. So we'll keep that separate for a moment. 7 stations called for under the 2005 fire plan. Under the plan, each station would have 20 career members for a total of 140 career members. Here's the map from the 2005 plan. The areas around each station are the travel zones, if you will. They represent a 3-kilometer radius using road patterns that are in effect. 3 kilometers are important because at 45 kilometers an hour, which is an average speed for a responding vehicle, that's how far we can get and still maintain council's response target, excuse me. So there are our 7 stations plus Protection Island under the 2005 plan. And we see Station 1 in the downtown area, Station 2 north of that, Station 3 at the top, Station 4 south of downtown, Station 5, a future station, excuse me, Station 6 in Hammond Bay, Station 7 we've got as Protection Island, and we've listed that as Station 7 because that's what it's currently known as. Station 8 we've got down in the industrial area, Duke Point. That, again, is the 2005 plan, I'll just emphasize. Now, the build-out that I just showed you on the map is based on some key points. First of all, the need to achieve the response time targets set by council throughout the whole of the community. So that plan was designed to put in place stations in areas that would help to achieve council's targeted response times throughout the whole of the community. The belief that each station must have 4-member crews ready to respond 24/7 to a structure fire. That was one of the key elements that went into designing the 2005 plan. Also the belief that the first vehicle on scene must be a 4-member engine with all of the members on board. So 4 members traveling on one vehicle to a scene, to all incidents. The new model, the one we're proposing, has a different build-out with 8 stations plus Protection Island. Again, Protection Island kept separate. I'll explain why the colors differ here, but we see Station 1 downtown, we see Station 2 to the north, Station 3 to the north again, Station 4 to the south of downtown, Station 5, Westwood, Station 6, Hammond Bay, Station 7, Protection Island again, Station 8 is the Duke Point area, and then Station 9 is a new one featured in this proposed model that wasn't in the 2005 plan. And you see that to the northwest of Station 2 area. Again, we see our service areas, our travel areas represented by the, not really circles, but represented by the shapes around each station as the travel times, the 3-kilometer radius. Under this new model, Stations 1 and 2 would remain staffed as they currently are, that is with 20 members each. And that decision, that suggestion is based on an assessment of the risk, an assessment of our evidence, of our data, which tell us very clearly that most of our incidents happen within those areas, and more importantly, that the vast majority of our structure fires happen within those service areas. So we would have 20 members each at each of those stations. The other 6 stations with the blue areas would be staffed with 10 members each. Each would have a crew of 2, 24/7. Each crew would have 1 firefighter and 1 officer. The total force under this model would consist of 100 career members, not 140, as under the 2005 plan. The area around each station, the blue area that I mentioned, that I showed you in the proposed model, the yellow areas in the 2005 model, but in the proposed model, the blue areas, the area around each station would be a risk management zone. The 3-kilometer radius, in order to allow council's response times to be achieved. Within this area, most calls would be handled by a single 2-person crew, but where required, several 2-person crews would converge on an event. And I'll just illustrate that here. So we have an event up here, we would have 2 crews, more if required, from these 2 areas. We would have 2 crews from these 2 areas if required. Again, if we had a structure fire that required more than a 2-person initial response. Convergence from these 2 areas, convergence from these 2 areas, you get the picture. Training protocols under this model, very important in order to allow the first crew to perform initial tasks on scene. Right now, our training protocols are for 4-person crews. For a 2-person crew, we would have training protocols that would allow certain tasks to be done with the first 2-person crew on scene if they were waiting for another 2-person crew to arrive. Application of water, those kinds of incidents. When we review this model, we need to keep in mind a number of key points, Your Worship. The first is that Stations 1 and 2 would have 20 members each, which would translate into 2 2-person crews. Those would be on 24/7. The risk assessment shows us that four-member crews are not required for the vast majority of the calls to which the department responds. The new model gives better coverage in the north end. We've added a station, Station 9. The new model would result in no reductions in existing staff. In fact, we would add more staff. Clear right throughout the model is the notion that the question for Nanaimo Fire Rescue and for the city of Nanaimo is not whether the department continues to grow, but how the department continues to grow. The model puts forward a proposal that tries to answer that question in the most cost-effective way possible. A key point here is that the volume of calls would be lower. Going back to the comments I made earlier under the risk reduction, Your Worship, we see from the evidence in other jurisdictions where this type of model or elements of it have been implemented, and particularly the prevention, the risk reduction, we see a significant decrease in absolute numbers in the volume of calls. The volume of calls lowering is significant because it reduces, of course, the number of incidents to which we need to respond. It also is the number one factor in improving firefighter safety. If you're not responding to calls, you're not in harm's way. Measurement of outcomes, Your Worship, another element of the model. Under the current model, Your Worship, the focus is on measurement of inputs, excuse me. Number of firefighters, how do we compare to other departments, those kinds of questions. Under the new model, the performance measurement is focused on outcomes. What's our volume of calls? Is it down across the board? Is it down in certain areas of the city? What are our targets based on our risk assessment? Do we focus on different demographic groups, different types of calls, different neighborhoods in the city? And when we look at our outcomes, are we meeting those targets? Are our calls with structure fires, with EMS, with alarms, are they going down? The severity of incidents. What's our target based on our all-hazard risk assessment? Are we achieving that? Are we having an outcome which shows that there are fewer severe incidents, or that the incidents that do occur are less serious? Community health and safety. Are we improving the health and safety of the community? This is an outcome that has not been measured under the traditional model. It's being measured in places where we see this model, this proposed model being implemented. Firefighter job satisfaction. I talked earlier about the high amount of downtime. Are we getting more satisfied? Are we having busier firefighters? Are they more satisfied? Department productivity, again related to the downtime. Are we using our resources, our human resources, as productively as possible? We've invested a lot of money, and we have very highly skilled human resources. Are we using them to the best, most effective way possible? The cost per capita of our service, is it going down every year? Adjustments. The adjustments element, Your Worship, is a key part of this model, as is every part, but adjustments is worth noting in particular here, because our entire model, as I've tried to emphasize in this presentation, Your Worship, is based on evidence. What does the evidence tell us? How do we respond to fires? How do we prevent the incidents that we know, based on evidence, excuse me, are going to occur or are likely to occur in different parts? Our entire model is based on evidence. In keeping with that notion, then, we would be gathering evidence during the implementation, and we would adjust as necessary. We're not saying this is etched in stone. We put this forward, we see what evidence comes back. Are we achieving our outcomes? Do we need to adjust resourcing levels to get better outcomes? Will adjusting resources levels achieve those outcomes? But we make adjustments as necessary. We adjust in future years as well, in response to factors in the community that may change. Right now we have different parts of the community that have certain socio-demographic characteristics. Over time, those will change. We need to adjust our model then to take those into account. Your Worship, one of the key elements in the design of the model, one of the key considerations has been the financial impact. In fact, it may be argued that the cost element has been a very large driver in the effort to look at this new model. The net cost to operate the department, if we just look back over the past 5 years alone, Your Worship, has increased significantly. Starting on the left there with 2012, and we go down, 2011, 2010, 9, and 8. By any measure, This department is expensive and becoming more expensive, and has become more expensive to taxpayers to deliver, to operate. Whether we look at the actual operating budget, 38% increase over the past 5 years, whether we look at the expenses per capita, which is typically the measure that's used to assess the efficiency of services in city government. 38% as well, 159 this year, 115 in 2008. The department's operations as a percentage of total city operating expenditures, 12% from 7%. And again, the department's percentage of total municipal tax revenues, the impact on taxpayers, 14.2% versus 12.8%. The biggest driver of cost is staffing, in particular the cost of our professional members. And that's not surprising. That is the same in every fire service across the world. Under the 2005 fire plan, we would see an increase in our professional staffing from 81 members to 140 members. And this increase is based solely on the current model's reliance on 4-member engines for all responses. I showed you earlier the build-out. That build-out I mentioned was based on the assumption that we needed 4-member engines in every station on every shift. What we see here, Your Worship, is a projection over the next 12 years, the time frame for this model. This shows in constant dollars, that is 2012 dollars, the financial impact, the cost that is simply of the professional firefighters. We've isolated that particular cost as the biggest cost in the department. It's based on the current model, or the current price, excuse me, the average figure per firefighter of $115,000, which is salary and benefits. That does not include overtime, by the way, which is minor. This figure also does not take into account any future increases in salaries that may occur. And we know we can anticipate that future increases will occur. I think Council is aware, Your Worship, that firefighter salaries are set typically through an arbitration process that brings a leveling upwards of all firefighter wages to a Vancouver model. Actually, this year to a Delta model, we anticipate, which is hard.
Not during the presentation. I can't understand what you're saying.
Your Worship, the other thing when we turn to the next financial impact, then we look at the new model, and we see a raise there from 81 members to 100 members. We see an increase commensurate with the existing model to 2016, 2017. Then we see a flattening out. The shaded area, Your Worship, represents the return to taxpayers between the two different models. Paid on call, I'll just mention a few words about the paid on call issue, Your Worship. The paid on call contingent, there are currently, I believe, over 50 members paid on call, which is a little lower than what the department has traditionally had. The paid on call contingent is an important resource, not only for the department, but also for the community. In recent years, this contingent, this resource has been underutilized. We've seen a lower than optimal return on investment on the money spent on paid on call, and we've also seen a decline in morale of the paid on call. Under the new model, we would invest in new training for key support tasks. That is, the key role for our paid on call contingent would be to provide support to professional members at incidents. We need to ensure that that contingent has the training required so that they can provide the maximum value. Used effectively then to the maximum potential at the different events. Right now, paid on calls are not being used at some events, or they're not being used effectively. Under the new model, the paid on call group would be better positioned as an internal resource for future recruitment of career members. And they'd be better positioned because they'd be utilized at events. They'd be part of the department in a way they're not currently. And they'd also be trained to provide the key support tasks. In the business case that will be coming forward in mid-May, Your Worship, the case will address Council's resolution with respect to paid on calls. And I believe City Manager Kenning and Chief Lambert talked about the paid on call resolution that was made earlier. The model will also outline the key role for the paid on calls in the new model. The roles will speak, as I've alluded to already, to the importance of this resource as a support to the professional firefighters at incidents. And it will look to centralize in stations 1 and 2 the paid on-call force to maximize the value at incidents and providing support. In closing, Your Worship, the integrated risk management model that we've talked about uses evidence to assess all types of fire, health, and safety risks in Nanaimo. It manages those risks through targeted reduction and flexible response. It organizes crews into risk management zones to best match the needs identified through our risk management assessment. It measures the outcomes that we achieve and adjusts accordingly to help us achieve more. The return on investment, by the way, Your Worship, in that one graph I showed, part of that, if necessary, is available to make adjustments as we go on. The model is designed to provide better service and better outcomes than we see under the current model. It's also designed as the most cost-effective way forward for the department, designed to place the department on a sustainable financial footing. And I'll end there, Your Worship. And I'm obviously pleased to take any questions. I may defer to Chief Lambert and Deputy Chief Richardson to assist in some of that, and if collectively we're unable to answer, we will certainly take the feedback and work it into our materials for May.
Okay, thank you very much. There will be a number of questions. Interesting discussion. I'm just curious, I have a couple of questions myself. Who makes the decision on how to respond to a risk-based response? You were referring to the risk-based one, and it would be a new format, but I'm just wondering, who makes the call of who responds to it?
The risk-based model, the risk-based assessment creates the foundation then that you use to assign the different crew sizes and apparatus to different parts of the city. So we know with confidence, with a very high degree of confidence in fact, and we see this in other places where it's used, that certain events are likely to occur. We can predict where they're going to occur, even what time of day they're going to occur. Using that information, we can place our resources accordingly. Once we get a call then in a zone that a particular incident has occurred, it becomes that station commander to determine how the incident is responded to, whether in most cases it's a two-person crew or whether they need to bring in another two-person crew from an adjoining station.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious, I think it was Liverpool you gave as an example, and I think they affected a reduction of, I guess, of efficiency or whatever, around 30%. How did they achieve that? What did they do?
Prevention.
Prevention?
So Liverpool has gone door to door in high-risk neighborhoods. In fact, every fire company in Liverpool Station, in every station throughout the city, is required or expected to make 100 door-to-door visits every month. And they've gone through and done tens of thousands of door-to-door visits every year. And they go through and they do an assessment with the homeowner. And they schedule these in some cases, they do cold calls in other cases. But it involves firefighters, and it involves in some cases what are called fire advocates who work with the firefighters. In fact, in a lot of cases, they'll work with other public safety and social service providers to deal, because you often find some of the behaviors that result in fire risks, and in some cases incidents, have their roots in social issues. So they'll do door-to-door delivery of these programs, identify the risks in each area in the particular household, advise on how to fix that. They'll also do, and we see this in Surrey as well, Your Worship, installation of fire alarms to single-family residences. So they'll go, smoke alarms, smoke detectors. They'll go into different areas and they'll just do a blitz, and they'll say, we will come in free of charge and put in a smoke detector, because we know that those save lives, those reduce fires. And those fires that do occur, the severity is reduced as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, very much. I've got about 5,000 questions, but I'll keep it down to 3 if I may. Your example seems to come from the United Kingdom, from Liverpool, Merseyside, whatever it is. Did those departments do medical calls like they do here now?
They don't do EMS. They don't do first responder for the ambulance services we do. And
so that is quite a difference already.
Well, it begs the question then, why the UK? And there are a couple of responses to that, I guess. The first, and not to bore you with history, but just as a small kind of background to it, when we look at the standards of response coverage model, which is the traditional model, That was a model that was developed in the UK in the late 30s in preparation actually for World War II. That model, after World War II, was examined at 3 different times between 1950 and 1985 in the UK. And it was examined for a couple of reasons. One was because they wanted to figure out how to make the model more cost effective because they couldn't afford it. The second was because they realized that no matter how many resources they put into this, they couldn't get better outcomes in terms of fire deaths, fire injuries, basic community health and safety. 2001, the central government, because it's organized a little bit differently in the UK, it's centralized out of London, the central government said, enough, we are going to bring in a new model and it's going to focus on prevention. And it then achieved a number of different results. It achieved the 25%, 28% reduction and it achieved with 25% fewer costs. So the first part of that question is it works. And we can take the examples, even though they're not EMS, and apply them to EMS. And that relates to the second part of the answer, Your Worship, and that is that when we look at the Liverpool model, and it's followed also in Greater Manchester and West Midlands and London and Strathclyde and all over the UK, when we look at that model, we see that, and it's the integrated risk management model that we're presenting here, it has been endorsed in the United States by the International City Management Association, by the Center for Public Safety Excellence, by the grand juries in California, by Vision 2020, which is a multi-party group including IAFF and IAFC and the Institute of Fire Engineers. It has been endorsed by all of these American groups. And that, I think, answers your question because they're very much focused on EMS and they have the same kind of workload that we have. And they've said, we can take these and apply it to EMS.
Okay. First follow-up, if I may. When such a huge portion of calls have to do with medical, 64%, and motor vehicles, what could firefighters do to prevent that kind of stuff? They really would not have much of an impact on that, would they?
Well, you know, when we look at it, first of all, it's going to depend on the specific neighborhood within the city. In some neighborhoods, I'll give you an example, in some areas, we may find a disproportionately large number of seniors, high number of seniors. And we may find, based on our evidence, that most of the calls traditionally within that area over a given period of time have been related to household injuries. Can be climbing ladders, could be shoveling snow. I know there's not a lot of snow here in Nanaimo, but it could be shoveling snow. It could be cleaning eaves troughs, those kinds of things. Through the all-hazard risk assessment, then, we understand kind of what is causing these different risks, what the risks are, what is causing these different incidents. We can then target those particular behaviors. In some cases, it's as simple as saying, here's how you set up a ladder, and going into homes, doing the door-to-door, doing small group sessions in different neighborhoods to identify what the behaviors are that are leading to these incidents.
Final one. Now, in the word risk, there is an inherent connotation that you don't get everything.
Yes.
So do you have a handle on what has fallen through the cracks because of incorrect risk assessment?
There will always, as you mentioned, be things that fall between the cracks. And in fact, when we look at council's targets, I think implicit in that, and those are based on international NFPA targets, implicit in those targets is the notion that we're not going to be able to resource for all incidents. We go up to 90%. There's going to be some that we just can't resource for. So the first part of that answer, I think, then, is we can never provide enough resources to mitigate all risks or to deal with all incidents. So the question then is, what's an acceptable level of risk? We try to mitigate that through prevention. We try to address it through risk-based response. Falling through the cracks, it's going to depend in different places. We have a sense, we know, and the department spends a lot of resources in identifying and assessing fires that have occurred and near misses and different kinds of pressures that the department's under. We'll identify through our risk-based assessment as one of the factors kind of where we failed in the past, what things we failed to prevent, what things we didn't respond well to, and those will take on a new risk measure, if you will.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got all sorts of questions here, and they're numbered in terms of priority, and then now I sort of changing the priorities around, and because I'm quite exercised over this. In 2005, I was on council at the time, and there was a conscious decision. It was a conscious decision to move from the reliance on volunteer firefighters, paid on-call firefighters, towards a professional force. So the fact that the numbers have increased isn't a surprise and shouldn't be a surprise because it was intended. So I just wanted to make that clear and sort of frame my response in that. Today, Margaret Thatcher died. I suspect she may have had quite an influence on service delivery in Manchester and Liverpool.
She was actually out of office for 10 years. By the time those came through, she had been out of office for 10 years.
She had certainly set a stage.
Actually, it was a
and
Labour
she was
government.
following along. It was called a new Labour government, and in my view, it was a considerably different government than the former Labour governments. But I think if we ask the citizens, the ordinary people of Liverpool and Manchester, we might get a different response in terms of how satisfied they are with the public services that they receive. I'm quite sure we would get a different response.
May I point out just... Okay.
So having said that, so having framed my response that way, I want to ask you, how much thought was given at the beginning of this process to bring in the people who deliver the service and to look at this new business model and bring them in and ask them to work with you on this business model? I'd like to know how much consideration was given, and if not, why not? These are the people that deliver the service. These are the people that are expected to carry this new business model. I want to know whether they were brought in at the beginning, and if they weren't, why they weren't.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first point I'd just like to comment with respect to the views of Liverpudlians, which is actually the term for people from Liverpool. Small bit of trivia there.
Scousers too.
I haven't seen any surveys. I will say, though, that since the model was introduced, fire deaths have reduced by 40%. I suspect that's probably bodes well with most people in Liverpool. The second point, with respect to the engagement of people delivering the service, two questions, I guess, with that, Your Worship. The first, or 2 points with that. The first is that Chief Lambert, Deputy Chief Richardson, the other fire officers in the fire management, for some time now, have engaged on a regular basis with the people delivering the service and have put forward the notions of the public safety ambassador, the notions of convergence and so forth. That discussion has been going on in stations across Nanaimo for some time. With respect to the expertise in fire delivery, Chief Lambert and Deputy Chief Richardson and others have that expertise. With respect to moving forward and engaging others in the movement as we continue, because keep in mind we've still got we're simply providing a synopsis here. We're going to now be fleshing this out. We actually have a meeting tomorrow with representatives of the IAFF, and we'll be expanding beyond that to meet with different companies throughout the fire department. And also, I should mention, Your Worship, with others in the community.
Okay.
Worship, I would just also, and Alan can elaborate on this. As part of putting together this draft, one of the groups that Alan did meet with was the firefighters. So the consultation has begun and will be ongoing. So I don't want it to seem like we haven't engaged the crews to this point. He's actually met with them, the fire executive, and reviewed where we're going, asked them questions, and that will continue as we move forward.
Okay, Ms. Brandon, go ahead. Have you finished? Go ahead.
No, I don't have any more questions at this point.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't realize that this was going to be as long, so in the absence of time, I'll only ask one of many questions that I have. You mentioned from the outset that four-man engines aren't necessarily required for all calls or workloads or demands, and whereby this integrated risk management model will permit or allow us to send twos and double twos and so on, depending on what the requirement is or what the requirement would warrant. My question then is, we currently meet the four-engine response approximately 97 to 98% of the time. And I'm wondering, given that you are a practiced consultant in this field and have been, I forget how many, I think you said 11 years, what would it cost us to meet 100% of the time with four men?
This is under your current model. So I believe
Correct.
You're speaking, I haven't done that analysis. I do know, however, from just talking to the chief and the deputy chief and looking at the numbers that have been put together, my understanding is that at present, to bring all crews to four members using overtime, it would be about $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
$30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Yes. Now,
utilizing overtime.
That's correct. Now, it needs to be emphasized, Your Worship, however, that is at present. As we move forward in our fire model under our 2005 plan, and we build out, if we were to build out under the 2005 plan, the 8 stations, including Protection Island, or the 7 stations plus Protection Island, and we were to staff those with 20 members each, the cost would be much higher based on those 4-member crews, because we would be hiring an extra 60 members as opposed to an extra 20 members.
Thank you.
Your Worship, I think it's worth clarifying too that when staff had referred to the $30,000, and I can be corrected by the chief here, we were talking about structure fires. As was noted in the presentation, many of the calls, 60% or more, are for EMS, and our anticipation would be that would also include the 4-member crew response, which has not been accounted for and would have quite a huge impact on budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I might make a comment, Your Worship, I also found it interesting that the graph and the chart that we had from 2005, which provided our incremental increase in numbers, and it's right on target, so to speak, with those numbers of calls, although at the time we didn't know that we would be responding to MVAs, which correlates to 10% of our workload. However, the graph and the chart is meeting those numbers almost magically. It's interesting. I also find it interesting that a question, this integrated management system that's been endorsed or approved or otherwise in the United States and some states, is it anywhere in the province of British Columbia right now being introduced other than here?
I can tell you that there are 2 other stations that are looking at it, and I know that there are cities such as the city of Surrey has some elements of it in place.
Thank you.
Particularly through the targeted prevention.
I'm sure there may be some more debate once we get into the 3 recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Worship. Morning, Mr. Nielsen, or good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you again.
You too.
I'm not going to shoot the messenger, although you probably could defend yourself adequately. I'm starting to regret that I made this motion to review the fire plan. My motion was to update the standard of response coverage study to reflect current conditions and to best meet the standard of the first engine on scene within 6 minutes, 90% of the time. And I was assuming that that would be a 4-man engine. And so obviously it's not going to be in much of the case. And I guess looking at the target, I don't think our target in 2005 says 4-man engines, does it? It says 6 minutes, 90% of the time.
That's correct.
So I guess we kind of goofed on that one. We should have included 4-man engines, 6 minutes, 90% of the time. Anyway, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut next time when bringing a motion forward about the fire department. And don't take offense to this. You did use I had a lot of stuff, and I got 1,000 questions, but I'm not going to go there. But I do have 3. You're welcome. Safe firefighting staffing. and again, don't take offense, but in an article in the Fire Engineering, puts it, a football coach who sent his team out on the field with 6 men and then fed the other 5 in piecemeal as the game progressed would be considered an idiot. Yet, this is the same policy that many city officials and hired consultants are forcing on fire chiefs, always in the guise of greater efficiency and, of course, economy. And I'm not going to go on to it. But this was in 1995, so I guess this has always been ongoing. Again, I got 1,000 questions, but I'll only ask 3. In the report, you speak about various risk reduction programs, and you touched on it, and by the career firefighters. Could you give me an example of what they would do? They would knock on the door, 2 guys would knock on, or girls, knock on the door and say, here we are.
Often it's done scheduled in advance, not always, but in some cases. In Manchester, for example, one of the things they'll do is whenever there's an incident in a neighborhood, a crew will stay on scene and will go door to door and say, an incident just occurred, would you like us to look at your house and I help you identify where you've got certain risks and give you some strategies on how to deal with those. And by the way, we noticed you don't have a smoke alarm. Allow us to come and put one in for you. Could be that, that kind of
well,
thing.
that's okay. And four firefighters could do that as well as 2, I guess. But And what is a quick attack engine?
Quick attack engine is a vehicle that we're seeing now more in use in the U.S. And it is an engine that's designed to be used by 2. It's an engine that has certain, often it uses foam systems in place of water, so it can, and there's been a lot of research actually on the use of foam as a superior retardant and mechanism or fluid, if you will, to put out fires. It's something that can be taken out of a station very quickly with 2, very cost effective. In fact, a study out of Minnesota found it to be 5 times or 1/5 as expensive, 5 times less expensive, 1/5 as expensive as running an engine. So it's a vehicle that's smaller, that has the capability to deal with certain types of incidents, and it's something that is, as I mentioned, is being used in a number of different places in the U.S. now.
So in each convergent area or response area, you'd have 2 of these engines?
Depends on the risk again. Some would have, but in some areas where we know that there's a higher probability of structure fires and large fires, there may be a full engine.
Okay. And last one, Your Worship. It's stated that at major incidents to which they are called, the paid on call would be used effectively and to their maximum potential in the support capacity. It's been a while since I've been on the job, but that's been ongoing as long as I can remember. They've been used whenever they're needed. I don't understand, how is that going to change?
As General Manager Swaby mentioned, Your Worship, in putting together this with Chief Lambert and Deputy Chief Richardson, I met with a number of different groups, including the Paid On Call group. And listening to some of the concerns of the Paid On Call and in corroborating some of that material with input from the chiefs, found that in fact, they're not being well utilized at every incident, and that they'll go to do certain response, and either they are not being called upon by the incident commander, and so obviously in some cases just simply sitting idle, or in other cases simply not having the training to do all of the support tasks that one would hope they could do. So we would be looking at bringing them into the department a little more, making sure they were training so the incident commanders had the full confidence to use them in some of those capacities.
I said one more, didn't I? This is the last one.
Okay.
Getting closer to 1,000.
Yeah. I think out of the last, I don't know how many that were hired, I think 24 of them have their first-class firefighter already from the Justice Institute, so I don't know why they'd have to be trained anymore. But that's all I got. My head's rattling around. I got too much to ask. So.
Okay. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. My primary question was asked by Councillor Bestwick with regard to other areas in British Columbia, or even Canada for that matter, who have implemented this model. But I'll be anxious to see it move forward and hear what the stakeholders have to say about it, Mr. Nielsen, and our members of the fire department as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. To the chief or through the staff, HRVA, have we done one? Hazard Risk Vulnerability Assessment? We conducted one?
Actually, some of the information that I've presented to you is the basis for that. There's relevant to structure fires. We know what medical responses are. Certainly transportation incidents, I think we've got a rough idea what that is. I think we've got enough information for a framework. And I think what the integrated risk management model does is it's going to direct us to do those risks in more detail over time. And so that both our mitigation and response efforts are directed, associated with that risk.
We appreciate that, and I know we have a risk assessment that's done for all hazard risk. Doesn't seem to be mentioned much in here. Liverpool's totally different than here. On average, North American firefighters die at a higher rate, way higher rate than the European rates. Concrete buildings, they don't do a lot of defensive fighting. And if we could free up 65% of our time with no medicals, we'd have time to deliver those paid-for smoke detectors. I think I've heard from some of my friends that up to $700,000 a year in Liverpool for smoke detectors. So that's a good one. There's also the ability for sprinkler systems that I know. Community engagement scares me on this. It talks about collaboration in here a whole bunch of time, and you're going out to collaborate by telling people our model. And I agree that maybe we got to go out a bit farther afield sometimes to talk to people. Not to Liverpool, mind you, but to Chase River and places. Events and incidents scare me in this. I always hear the incident, the incident, the incident. When we get into these major events, and an event may have a number of incidents in it, and that concerns me. Mutual aids. I'm not certain I want to be the corporation that signs mutual aids with the 911. There might just be a two-man crew coming because that hazard wasn't analyzed in that. So that concerns me. And the European death number is a different, and the other issues of it. So I like the idea of integrated risk management model. I've fought for it for years. I think it's important. But it looks like we're reinventing something here that our provincial government has, a hazard and risk vulnerability. It's a standard model that everybody starts to understand. So I could go on for a long time on this one. You know, this is really, it says council's response times targets. Yes, we adopt those, but they're from our professionals. I mean, the events, the language. I hear mitigation, but I don't know if it's highly skilled staff. I mean, before I know staff got in trouble for leaving their vehicle and doing a marine inspection. And then they got in trouble for that, for leaving the apparatus. So I hope it's changing so that it does give more sort of building that reputation of the fire department, but it's a bit confusing to me going to this risk model just as an economic balance. I mean, we don't have to have firefighters. We need inspectors, but we have firefighters and we have a fire department. So I think the community need for it is maybe analyzed differently than this. Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. And oh, you're on again, are you?
I'd just like to move staff's recommendation, Your Worship.
Well, wait, before we do, let's wait because we have a delegation yet to come.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Taylor.
So thank you, Mr. Nielsen. And what I was going to ask, but unfortunately I got interrupted part way. Sorry, Mr. Taylor. I was just going to ask if you could give us an outline, or maybe Mr. Kenny can, how are we moving forward on this? Mr. Kenny? Or who else?
Well, Your Worship, depends whether or not council passes the staff recommendations, but it's our recommendation tonight that council would receive the report. I think it was mentioned that that we're late on in the process, but yes, we've done a lot of work, but I think we consider this as the start of a more public process. We'd like to, and so that's our second recommendation, that we would like council to authorize us to have more consultation with the stakeholders, including the medical aid or the emergency medical providers, with the firefighters, with the paid-on calls, and with other citizens. And then we would like council to authorize us to present an updated model after completion of the consultation back to council in May.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor, sorry, go ahead.
My name is Fred Taylor, and to start, I would like to mention to Councillor Greaves, quick attack vehicles were introduced to the City of Nanaimo Fire Department with the former chief and asked to visit a demonstration in Ladysmith, which he did. He come back and said, pile of crap. And there was already 70 in use, brand new, in BC. And the biggest user was the Force Department because of the foam and air right on this small vehicle, which is a good small vehicle for attending medical calls and everything else. And any kind of fire, basically. A draft business model for the Nanaimo Fire Department is before the council. As I have spoken in the past, the question of size of vehicle and the level of medical aid response is slowly approaching the horizon. The new model apparently would match the level of response to the need. The new model speaks of two-man, smaller vehicle medical aid response, but fails to address the need. My opinion, not all medical calls need to be attended by two agencies, Nanaimo Fire Rescue and BC Ambulance. Reduce the costs. It's up to you people to give or withdraw the action, the direction to attend all medical calls. Now, as I've spoken to council in the past, BC Ambulance has categorized every call they could think of getting. When they ask you questions, they put you into a group. Latest is to take those calls and with the category, place them in by number, and when they do come up with a particular number, if you can see the red, we'd like help. So there's lots in here don't have that red on. But we got to attend all calls. They got another wheelbarrow, Councillor McKay. BC Ambulance already determines the level of need, which I just showed you. I believe we just simply do not need to attend all medical aid calls as we have requested. I would ask for records of how many we attend. We get the answer, you're not needed. Let's see the figures. Drive, roar, fire truck chasing an ambulance across the town. Don't need you. It's happened. I understand the Fire Rescue Department has retained a medical director as per in their earlier plan. I'm getting word, but I haven't seen it. He has a fire jacket, physician written on the back. They can confirm it, but I don't like that. I don't think we did that at expense. To support higher level of medical care training. Is there a dislike for BC Ambulance? The report often mentions council response time. Would an industry recognized standard response time keep council away from any liability issues? If you're saying we want our engines there in 6 minutes, the last time they promoted building some new halls, they came with pictures, everything else of what happens inside of a fire, etc. We want a response time of 4 minutes. Now, why I'm saying this is, if my house is across from fire hall and it's 6 minutes to get there, because of where else they are. Do I have any avenue of going after the city for delay and half my house burning up because you're saying you don't have to be there for 6 minutes? I think you should stay away from council direction of what time. Just liability I'm looking at. The report often mentions 4-member crew on response engines. I ask when the direction of council for the 4-member crew. Here's a report from Mr. Swaby about it's going to come to council about 4 engines and all the performance stuff to go to 4-engine crew. I still haven't seen it. The report states the belief of a 4-member crew contradicts the question of 4-member crews before the council. Now, they're talking about to go to 2 station for an area for crews to call out. When we talk about manpower, in my opinion, you got to look back at the response to the call for a building or structure fire. And if you look on the incident report on your website, you'll see the address, the call, and you'll see all the engines listed, because that dispatcher starts off, from what I hear, engine 1 to a certain call, engine 2 to a certain call, engine 3 to a certain call, engine 1, 2 to a certain call, engine 1, 3, and they maybe leave engine 4 or some other engine to go to the center of the city for need if there's another incident. But that, what I hear is that initial call labeling many engines which have, say, we'll say 3 men or more. There's lots of men going to that fire. And I think it's good, rather than what we've seen tonight, of circling 2 areas and saying they go to a fire, a structure fire. Because if the words come in, there's a large structure fire, in my opinion, you're hearing all engines called out. I think that's good. But it also contradicts how many men you need on each engine, because it's sending lots to the one you need the incident, the manpower at. And sure, one might, because it's a little further away, arrive a little bit later, a minute or so, but they're all on their way, because that's one call, one dispatch. Now, response areas of the maps you've seen tonight of some stations includes large areas outside of municipal boundaries. For instance, the one Duke Point, over half of it is Cedar. Is this a clue of expansion of our municipality boundaries? What's going on? When we're seeing some of these fire maps covering areas outside of the city limits. I understand this policy, we don't. They have their own engines. And in the report you see tonight, the active report, I see no consideration of non-injury motor vehicle accidents. There is considerable consideration to education programs. May we reduce costs by conducting education programs by other than professional firefighters, just like workers at the RCMP, non-injury accident attendants by the fire department other than RCMP, which apparently costs more money if it's RCMP. And on-call, hourly paid position for our professional volunteer firefighter. You even get RCMP now send a lot of auxiliaries once they get the training to neighborhood watches and everything else. To reduce the cost down to even have a necessary, but keep the numbers of professional firefighters ready to go. Because if they're somewhere and you get another call, how do you gather them all up in that area?
Okay, Mr. Taylor, we're up over 10 minutes.
Oh, sorry. And I'll just leave with, I've heard word that Prince George's plan of action has failed. I'm hoping somebody is keeping in touch with what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Councillor Johnston, did you want to? It's right here.
Okay,
Staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation, I'd like to move the staff recommendation that council receive the report and attach synopsis for information, direct staff to consult with stakeholders, and present the completed business model documentation at a subsequent council meeting.
Yes, certainly we can. Okay, so let's start off on item 1. Councillor Kipp, did you
No,
have
it was
something?
on item 2 then.
Okay, so on 1, it was moved, and let's get a seconder to get 1 on the, moved and seconded, sorry. Okay, so on 1, to receive the report and the attached synopsis for information. Any discussion on this, Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I won't support receiving this report because I think implicit in the idea of receiving it is the notion that we're satisfied with the recommended direction, and I'm not. I'm not satisfied that Council's intent was ever to abandon the movement towards a professional service in favor of a new business model. And for those reasons, I won't support receiving this report.
Okay, I might be interested in staff opinion on that. Is that your understanding that if we did receive the report and the attached synopsis that might?
This is really a political decision in my view, not really staff's point of view, really. It's council's point of view of what I see implicit in this report. Others may think that it isn't, but I do think it is implicit that we agree with it, and I don't.
Fair enough. So we'll move along to Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just speak shortly in favor of this motion in that there are some things that I need a lot more information on. There's some stuff in there that I don't agree with, but that doesn't mean that I can't receive a report for those reasons, I don't think. And so I'll be voting in favor of this.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I will be voting in favor of receiving the report, as I don't believe that it triggers a decision on my part to adopt, amend, change anything that we're doing. We did ask for the report. It has come back. I may not, in fact, like everything that I read in it either, but to receive it, I'm okay with. The items 2 and 3, I may feel differently about. But in so much as receiving it, I don't think it's a trigger point.
Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. I certainly am not very happy with this because this is not what I asked for. I didn't ask for a new model. I've asked for an update on the standard of response coverage study that we did in 2005. The industry standard, as far as I'm concerned, is NFPA 1710. The chiefs and the firefighters of both countries have endorsed this, and I don't know why we're changing it. I've been on the job for 25 years, and I used to respond with 2 guys, me being one of them, and it was terrible. So I will not be supporting any of these for that matter.
Okay. Councillor Brennan, are you on again? Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
I just want to note that receiving the report actually agrees with the general direction. And because we are then sending them out saying, this is our report, these are our ideas, this is our model, what do you think? And that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to take this model out and say, I own this model, what do you think? Give me some ideas back, because I don't. I absolutely flat out do not agree with this model. So
Okay.
I can't receive it for that reason.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate what you're saying. More often than not, we receive reports. And for example, we received a delegation this evening with a report on the VICC, and I can assure you that because of the fact that I would vote to receive the delegation and/or the report contained that was provided in a PowerPoint presentation, I can assure you I don't necessarily agree that that is a trigger point for me to approve everything that was contained within that report. If in fact staff can confirm for me that this is a direction to alter the plan that we are in right now to the plan that's been presented tonight, without providing us the alternatives, the options, the pros, the cons, the costs, the financial implications, then I will also be voting against this. But I don't believe that, and I don't think that that's what this is an indicator of, but I could be wrong. I stand to be corrected.
Your Worship.
Kenny, do you want to make a comment on this?
Well, I would, Your Worship. I mean, what staff are intending is that council isn't being asked to approve anything. What we're saying is that if council authorizes us to move forward, we'll present something to you in May that you will either move forward with or abandon. But today is just an interim step to see whether council's interested in moving forward with some consultation, and but certainly no decisions would be made until May at the earliest, when council would receive the final report. It's only then that direction would be on the table for change.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick, you finished. Councillor Johnstone. Oh, sorry, do you want to add something?
I mean, there may be some components of this that I like relative to what we can complement what we currently have. And, you know, this was done in 2005, the first one. We're reviewing it 7 or 8 years later for the next 7 to 10 or however many years. The report that we just received tonight from the previous delegation was something that was done in 2004 by Grant Thornton, and we had all these numbers and stuff and bars and graphs and all the reasons why it hasn't worked. So I'd like to be able to think that we have the opportunity before us now to morph something that might work without dismissing, just being dismissive of everything. We might be able to have a combination of opportunities here that may work for us. That's all that I'm thinking.
Okay, and I share a lot of that view too. That, I mean, we did receive the report tonight. We sat and listened to it, and you know, whether or not to receive a report seems to me a little bit arbitrary. I don't see any damage in doing it, and I think it's a first step on this review that was called for by, I forget which member of council, but Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur with yourself and my colleague, Councillor Bestwick. I'm anxious to proceed forward to consult with stakeholders, actually, and with our members to see how it's going to be received by themselves. Many of them are in attendance tonight, and I presume they have many queries and questions and their own input to put into the model. So I'd like to proceed and see how it moves forward, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Brennan, last kick of the cat here.
The can. I don't want to be argumentative about this, but the information received earlier from the VICC was information on what has happened in the past. This report instead is what we want to happen in the future, and it sets the direction. Tonight we set,
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know.
I don't care if you agree or not. I'm just saying this is my point of view.
Yeah, well, we're not setting the policy moving ahead in the future. If that's your statement, that's incorrect.
My statement, I'm saying that this is the framework, and what we will do when we send it out is we are agreeing to tinker with it. We are not agreeing to fundamentally change it. And that's what we need to do, is we need to fundamentally change the direction that this report is going. And a simple consultation will not get us there. That's why I think it would be a mistake to receive it.
So, okay, there's no, Councillor Bestwick.
Well, then, Your Worship, if there's such, I mean, one of two things are going to happen here. Either we're going to proceed or we're not. But if there's such a strength in that sense or that feeling by Councillor Brennan, then I would suggest that we refer this matter back to staff for for further review until such time as we've had the opportunity to meet to discuss the pros and cons moving forward. This is the first time I've seen this. This is the first time I've seen it, the integrated report. So I didn't know it was going to be an hour and 15 minutes tonight or however long it's been. I didn't know that. So I would like more time to spend on it. So I'm quite happy to make that motion that we refer this to the next regular meeting of council and give us more time to review what we've been presented tonight.
Okay, well, a motion to refer will take precedence on this. And no, there is a motion on the floor. Item 1 is moved and seconded.
There's a motion on the floor, so we...
So,
I would second Councillor Bestwick's motion to refer it, but I'd like to see it referred back to staff for further work, given the conversation they've heard from us tonight.
well, okay. Councillor Kipp, did you want to speak to the motion to refer?
On a
really where we're at?
referral, I guess what I've heard from some of my peers here is we're not always happy with the information. There's a lot of information. It was supposed to be a quick review, but there's a lot of information. I have a concern, one of this, that we don't have a Protective Services Committee and a Public Safety Committee, and that's one of the reasons we're stuck in this precarious position of taking hundreds of pages of documents in and not understanding the process. So to refer it, I think, is important. But are we referring just to get them to review this? I'll say, way back when in the first, or Plan and I'm quite a ways back, they came up with 4 options. The status quo, that was the most expensive, a couple different options, condensing in that, and gave us some options of what is the best Plan Nanaimo to go forward. Is this going to ask for alternates, refer it back and have alternates to this or options?
I think the motion says for staff to review it and consider the comments of council tonight. Looking at the plan, consider what we said, and bring us back a new report.
If I can follow up on that, that's not really clear to me. And I've heard before about clear motions. I talked one night about protecting trees here, and that didn't work. So what's the motion? Just refer back, give me a clean motion. I can't even support the referral.
Do you have that motion to refer? That's simply that, is it not? Just simply that.
Well, Your Worship, I was just making notes from Councillor Brennan, and it sounds like what she was asking for is to refer for staff to do further review and consider what council said tonight. That's what I had just written down.
Yes, and to take into consideration the comments of council tonight.
Okay, Councillor Kipp. I'm sorry, Councillor Kipp spoken. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I want to get to number 2.
Well, but the motion to refer is on.
I want to come to the reason for number 2, and deferring this doesn't get me there. I need to have a consultation with the IAF, whom I understand don't know a heck of a lot about this particular plan, and it is much more important for me that discussion happens. And if I don't like it, then I won't be voting for number 3. It's as simple as that. But I need to get people to talk, and I need to have people involved. And deferring at this point does not get me there quick enough, and so I shall not be supporting deferral.
Well, we've got a huddle going on here, and the question, go ahead.
No, we're just discussing a procedural item, I think.
Well, I'm just wondering, that's my question to you, is that the motion that now is on the floor is to refer back to staff, and I can't see how we could proceed with 2 and 3 if the first item is referred back. That, as far as I'm concerned, kind of finishes the option to discuss it.
Well, I would agree with that.
Thank you.
So let me call the question.
The motion to refer refers it back to staff for staff review and for them to take into account the comments made tonight. One of the comments made tonight was, why haven't you had closer consultation with the firefighters? That was one of the comments made tonight. So it seems to me that if staff is going to follow direction of the motion to refer, that that's one of the first things that they would do, is take this report, review it, and talk to the firefighters
Okay.
before they bring it back to
The question I asked staff really doesn't relate to that. What I asked staff is if we're going to be referring on your motion on item 1, then it's kind of academic whether we should try to proceed with 2 and 3, which some other councils have asked for. Because once we refer, that's the end of that whole subject. And I believe Mr. Kenny nodded on that, did you?
Well, I believe so. If council refers it back to staff, we would hold off consultation on this report. We would consider the comments that council made and consider whether we were going to make any amendments to the report, bring it back to you, and probably consult with the groups as well, but we'd bring it back to you and then ask you to move forward with 2 and 3 at that time.
Yeah, the point is you can't refer part of it. It's all or nothing. So
I must say, I'm a little bit confused. I mean, I certainly hear Councillor Brennan saying, take into account the comments of councillors, but I've heard councillors say a lot of things, some in support and some not in support. So it'll take us a while to figure out how we would recommend we move forward. But having said that...
Well, I'm kind of disappointed too, because I would have just liked to at least get the information before us, but we'll refer it back. And so the question on the floor is one on to refer.
Your Worship?
Yeah.
Your Worship, we weren't able to catch the seconder. If you could
Yes,
just clarify that.
there was a seconder. I think
On the referral. Okay.
On the referral.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to refer. All those in favor? Opposed? So we have Mayor Tan and Councillor Johnson, Councillor Paggi opposed, balance of council in favor to refer, and so the motion to refer passes. Is that correct? Do you read it down?
I want to vote.
Well, okay, so we'll just refer the whole thing back, and it was an interesting hour and a half, and we'll move on to item B, rezoning application RA 313 at 1835 Bowen Road. The purpose is to present, maybe we'll just get about a 3-minute recess and while we do that. You don't have time for a cigarette, but I do. Rezoning application RA 313 at 1835 Bowen Road. The purpose is to present an application for a site-specific zoning amendment within the Community Corridor COR3 zone in order to permit a fast food restaurant on property located at 1835 Bowen Road. Staff recommendation that a motion that council receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.038. And there's the following bylaw, if somebody would like. Moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Councillor Besswick on this one?
I move the staff's recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay. And any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. No, we're going to the bylaw now. And the bylaw, motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.038, RA 313, site-specific zoning amendment to permit a fast food restaurant at 1835 Bowen Road, pass first reading. Moved? Second? Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And two, motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.038, pass second reading.
So moved.
Moved? Second. All those in favor? Oh, sorry?
Your Worship, with the corridor zone, I want to be confirmed all the time that we're concerning ourselves with the residential interface with our corridor zones, and the staff is that. I know that's a problem in a couple of areas now. This is a transitional zoning, so I know that our staff wants to be aware of those issues, that the residential interface as we transition to these higher density corridor zones. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a valid point. But I think this particular one really was maybe an oversight would be a strong word, but I think there was an interest in having a fast food restaurant in this location, which was which we didn't, as an oversight possibly on our part. Mr. Tucker?
Yes, Your Worship. Under the previous zoning, fast food restaurant would have been permitted on the site. Under the new bylaw, they're all site-specific, and there wasn't one. It was a vacant site at the time, so it wasn't picked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe this motion has been moved and seconded. Two nods, not just one, so it means we have been moved and seconded then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We move into South Downtown Waterfront Concept Plan Advisory Committee, and the purpose is to seek council support for establishing an advisory committee for the South Downtown Waterfront Concept Planning process. And the staff recommendation it would be that a motion from council to adopt the plan and also instruct staff to advertise for two committee members at large. And they've identified a number of entities, and there may be more that could be added in due course, as I understand it. But first we have Shinimo First Nation, the Nanaimo Port Authority, the Regional District of Nanaimo, Nanaimo Advisory Planning Committee, the Downtown Business Improvement Association, Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, the South End Community Association, and the Vancouver Island University. So, Councillor Besswick, did you...
Well, Your Worship, I just wanted to make a comment before we make
Okay,
any
let's
motions.
move it and second it, get it on the floor then.
Moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded?
I did both of them, moved and seconded.
So, thank you.
Did we
May-
get it?
or- so
You get
does
the
mover
mover
want to
and the
speak?
seconder? Okay,
So-
Councillor Besswick.
Just based on the previous conversation that we just had and the debate that we just had about accepting a report or accepting a finding or moving forward with an advisory group, or that it might mean that we're adopting the plan, the comprehensive South Waterfront Downtown Plan. I just want to ensure that by voting in favor of adopting the South Downtown Waterfront Concept Plan Advisory Committee mandate and objectives does not mean that I am voting in favor of what the plan that may be designed come back as.
Okay.
And that's placed in the form of a comment, but yet a question. Well, my tongue is firmly planted, but by virtue of simply moving forward with information through a committee is all that we are doing here.
Okay. Councillor Greaves, and then we have Mr. Tucker, I think, has a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is directed at staff, if I may. What's the cost of this plan and the committee, and is there any thought of other groups involved in the cost sharing, or do we or don't we do that type of thing?
Mr. Tucker, are you going to go, or who else?
Yes, this is being paid for out of the PILT funds, which are the payments in lieu of taxes coming from the Port Authority.
But
And
having said that, those are city-controlled funds, and we have asked in the past for the Port Authority to cost share in this, and haven't been successful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, did you also have a comment, Mr. Tucker?
Yes, Councillor Bestwick, in terms of establishing, this does not, certainly does not establish the plan, but this motion would establish the steering committee that would lead to the design of the plan, and so it's to the groups that were listed by the mayor were the groups that would send representatives to steer the plan through. So that's the step that we're taking tonight.
Okay, Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Worship. To staff as well, what criteria are you going to use to advertise for the 2 at-large members?
We would request people who have an interest in participating in the South Waterfront Plan, and it would be similar to the wording that we have for the Advisory Planning Committee, have an interest in, and it would be through the newspaper.
So just interest as opposed to qualifications?
That would be for council to decide who they wish to appoint, whether the people who expressed an interest had what council was looking for.
But that's just like any committee we struck. We would be provided with a list of names and the background on it, and council would go around the boy and make a decision. Okay. Councillor Brennan, sorry.
Thank you. This is really, I'm very supportive of this, and I am particularly supportive because right at the beginning of this process, we are bringing other stakeholders in to help us design the whatever it is, yeah, the Wilcox yard, yeah.
Perfect.
Right at the beginning, right off the bat.
Okay.
Bang, bringing in the stakeholders. Help us out.
Right at the very beginning.
Right
Okay.
at the beginning.
All righty. So with that, we will just ask now that the motion, sorry, has been moved and seconded on it. So on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And that's 1 and 2 to instruct staff to advertise for the 2. We're moving into D, the approval of a 60-year lease to Columbian Centers Society, the Haven Society, and the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Society for supportive housing located at 1597 Boundary Crescent, and the purpose is to obtain council approval to issue this 60-year lease on city-owned land located, as mentioned, to facilitate the construction of a 41-unit supportive housing project as part of the city's plan to house homeless. Move. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into E, Business License Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 5351.10. Proposed amendments to require fetal alcohol spectrum disorder warning signs be posted in premises where alcohol is consumed or sold. And the purpose is to obtain council approval for the bylaw to ensure that liquor licensed establishments post these warning signs. There's a motion, recommended motion on the floor. And if we could get it moved and seconded and then have some discussion. Moved. Second. Discussion, Councillor Kipp.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Worship. This is an interesting one that, and I totally agree with the fetal alcohol syndrome and what it causes, FASD, but man, we're going to have a $100 fine if someone doesn't display this license. And I know I had a meeting with some of the bar owners, and they were happy to have the meetings about this, or about the bar situations, but this came across fairly quick to them, and they were it was kind of brought on them. But a fine, $100 for not displaying the thing, I hope we're going to have some method of inducing them, or other than fining.
Thanks, Your Worship. We're working with the province. We've been playing telephone tag, but I understand they actually do produce some form of signage that we might be able to provide. Many of the pub owners actually do provide the signage now, and we'll work with them and ensure we're not going to be going out and just writing tickets when we don't see it. We'll be looking at that.
Good. Thank you.
was going to comment on that. Every bar you've been into, that you see those signs. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I'm certainly in favor of this. Likewise, I'm just hoping that the signs are universal and that they're professionally done and that they are mounted in obvious locations and so on and so forth, and not obscure and felt pen on the back of something. So I'm hoping that they're universal and that they're actually professionally done.
Your Worship, that's, when you look at the regulations that we've written, that's the intent of when we get really bureaucratic, when we talk about the size and the letter type. But yes, that's the intent, is that we have something that is common to all the liquor establishments and that they're highly recognizable, and we'll work on that with the province.
This forms part of our sign bylaw that we're working on?
Yeah. But they can't be flashy with them. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that this has been done. I think that fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is a condition that has wreaked havoc
Very serious.
in our nation. So I would just like to know or ask that those women that came and made the initial presentation that prompted this, that they be acknowledged and told that it's done and that they should expect to see them up, the signs up, and thanking them for.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. That's a great point, and we'll take care of that.
It is a good point. Okay, now the motion, the staff recommendation has been moved and seconded, and we just have to vote on it, and then the bylaw follows. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we move into the bylaw, business license amendment bylaw 2013, number 5351.10, to require fetal alcohol spectrum disorder warning signs be posted in premises where alcohol is consumed or sold. And the motion that business license amendments bylaw 2013, number 5351.10, pass first reading.
So moved.
Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Two, that business license amendment bylaw 2013, number 5351.10, pass second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, motion that business license amendment bylaw 2013, number 5351.10, pass third reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Changes in federal regulations of medical marijuana, to be introduced by Mr. Andrew Tucker, Director of Planning, Community Safety and Development, and purpose is to obtain council direction in regards to the changes to the rules affecting the growing of medical marijuana under the Marijuana for Medical Purposes regulation. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, Your Worship. The reason this report is before council tonight is due to a change that is coming about in the federal legislation governing medical marijuana. At the present time, medical marijuana is produced either under personal production licenses, so individuals can grow their own, and that typically is 49 plants, but it can be more for individuals. There are also what are called designated person licenses, which are if a person is unable because of their medical condition to grow their own, they can designate someone to grow it for them. Or the third option is you can buy it from the Government of Canada. It produces it somewhere in Saskatchewan, I believe. That's all going to change at the end of March next year, and the current system of production is moving under new regulations to more of a commercial scale operation. There will be large production facilities. Typically, think in terms of warehouses or greenhouses. Growing will occur indoors. There are standards in the new regulations about security provisions, the requirement for adequate ventilation, backup generators, and that sort of thing. So Health Canada is moving the regulations from more of an individual-based system to more of a commercially-based system. That means that we have to prepare our land use bylaws to be ready for that change. Municipalities across Canada are all going through the same process in preparation for this change at the end of March. The proposal in front, I should explain to Council that we have legal advice that our agriculturally zoned areas of the city would allow for the production of medical marijuana. Our definitions define it as farming, and there is legal advice that our definitions for agriculture would cover this. So their AR1 and AR2 zoned areas would permit it. The question or the option that's being presented to council tonight is should we also include it within our I-4 zone? This is the area out at Duke Point. And as these are going to be in warehouses, the production facilities, the question is, does council want to allow this type of use to occur? And what staff is offering as an option is to put it into the I-4 zone at this point. And I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you. No, you've really answered it all, except maybe you can put some more emphasis on the fact that it is no longer permitted to grow in residential premises. Is that not correct?
From a the production license point of view from Health Canada, that's correct. The question then will become in terms of the enforcement and whether the police force chooses to enforce on the basis of the individual. From a zoning perspective, the zoning would not affect that aspect of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify one thing too, that I think in the past, and maybe I might have missed it, you may have touched on it, but I think previously those people that were licensed to grow for their own consumption, their names and locations were never revealed to any of the emergency services, fire, police, and so on. I think now, will this change after April 1 of 2014?
Yes, Your Worship. Under the new regulations, the production facilities are required to notify the local municipality, the local fire department, and the local police department, and likewise be in a properly zoned area. So they'll be required to take out a business license like any other. I think the best way to characterize this would be that Health Canada is viewing production of medical marijuana on the same sort of regulations as any other pharmaceutical drug or prescription drug. So it would be produced, packaged, labeled, and then mailed to the consumer. There's no face-to-face sales under the new regulation, and that's why I haven't touched on the word retail at all. It would be online sales between a registered purchaser and a registered producer. So that's the new model that we're operating under starting April 1st next year.
Okay, I would assume the RCMP would be pleased with this change, but I guess it all remains to be seen. So, the staff recommendation. Second? Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So, obviously it is getting late. G, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title section 5.7. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies on the properties listed below. And the staff recommendation is that a motion that council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under section 5.7 of the Community Charter. The first one has been withdrawn, so item 2 is 3691 Cottleview Drive, illegal construction, existing construction without a building permit. Is there anyone here in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 3691 Cottleview Drive? The next property is 1793 Regina Way, incomplete construction, expired building permit, unfinished two-tiered retaining wall. Is there anyone in attendance here tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 1793 Regina Way? And the final one is 690 Brecken Road, illegal construction, construction to finish an unfinished basement without a building permit. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 690 Brecken Road? Seeing none, if somebody would like to make...
Your worship, that council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Second, no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Corporate services, and this is now delegations for 9A pertaining to the 2013-2017 financial plan.
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. I just have a couple of questions here. The first one's concerning general administration, the budget for that for the next 5 years, and that's under the corporate services. And basically what I was wondering is why there is such a hefty increase in this budget from the 2013 figure of $936,553 to the 2017 budget of $2,803,287, and that's a 1.9% increase over the 5 years. I was just wondering if someone could explain to me
maybe Mr.
why such
Clements?
a hefty increase.
Yeah. Or Ms. Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, I think our consensus is that we're going to have to review that, and we can get back to Mr. Fuller as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Okay. My second question has to do with asset management and assets. How much is the budget for sidewalks and medians in this city?
Ooh. Mr. Clements, have you got a figure for the sidewalks? Or Mr. Hickey? You will.
I think I read $500,000 in the budget handbook. I don't know if that covers medians as well.
I'm not sure. I don't have who's going to... Ms. Hickey, do you want to try that? Or Mr. Kenny, who do you want to delegate for this?
Well, Your Worship, I think it's a bit of a double-barreled question because we have a budget for sidewalk construction every year, which is relatively modest. I think, is it $50,000?
Yeah, well, capital budget for sidewalks is around $200,000. That's new sidewalk construction. We also have a transportation budget that includes a lot of maintenance for medians. We do, for example, cut the boulevards once per year. I believe the budget for that is around $120,000, but I don't have those numbers right in front of me for certain. So there are a few pockets of our budget where we have dollars for those types of services.
The reason I'm asking this question is, and it mainly has to do with maintenance. I've been noticing, and I don't know why I picked this out, but I did, that a lot of the sidewalks up in my area, Hammond Bay Road, Departure Bay area, happen to have really, really good weed fields growing in them. Grass that in some cases is up to my knee, and I was just wondering, because of the fact that some weeds do go right through concrete and disrupt it, I was just wondering if the city has any way to alleviate some of these grass fields, weeds, etc., because I know you have like street sweepers. I was just wondering if there was something.
Okay, Mr. Hickey.
Maritan, on that one, that is a challenge for us. We've moved away from use of pesticides, so we do struggle with how we get some of the weeds away. We are trying to lessen to the best we can pesticide use, so we sometimes work to have crews out there actually hand pulling them, or our contractors. And we've also worked on some of those areas where there's the seam between the concrete and the asphalt to actually put some, wouldn't call it epoxy, but a filler in there to prevent weeds from growing back. That's met with some mixed results. So anyways, we are challenged with that.
And one last question, and it also has to do with unsightly weeds and grass growing in city assets. Who's in charge of the maintenance of Diana Krall Plaza?
Well,
Maritana, Diana Krall Plaza is the responsibility of Parks, Recreation, and Culture for the maintenance in that area. Two things we do in areas where we have pavers. We have pavers on some sidewalks and pavers in that mall. We work to do paving with pressure washing on an annual basis. So you're probably referring to where we get some growth of an algae in among the pavers. So that is our program right now. Our service level is once per year pressure washing.
Well, as a somewhat premier destination, someone should really take a look at the back end of Diana Krall Plaza. It's absolutely freaking ghastly. There's grass growing up that high.
Okay.
Up almost the knee, and it's been that way for almost a year.
Okay, maybe can we make a note of that then and see on it, please?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak to the 2013-2017 financial plan? And seeing none, we'll move into 9B, the E-Town Hall budget meeting. The unanswered questions, and to be introduced by Mr. Douglas Holmes, Assistant City Manager and General Manager of Corporate Services. And the purpose, of course, is to follow up on the unanswered questions and comments from the E-Town Hall budget meeting, which was held March 25. I think it was a particular success, and I was very pleased, but we did receive more questions than we had time to answer. So tonight, we're going to try to catch up on that. Mr. Holmes?
That's correct, Your Worship. And the only comment I wanted to make, Your Worship, was that staff has attempted to answer as many of these questions as possible. And there were also, I think, about a half a dozen comments as well. And so just an invitation for any council comments in addition to what staff have attempted to provide.
Okay, well, are we going to, we're not going to have time for all these questions. How many questions did you have before? And I know I'm not going to encourage that. I'm just going to ask.
I think there were about a dozen that were left over.
And how were you going to answer them rather than do them tonight?
Well, Your Worship, the...
have you provided answers to the people that posed the questions?
They're in the report.
Yep.
And their staff's report, they're the technical answers that we could provide to the best of our ability. And if council wanted to comment on them at all, that would be up to further comment.
I don't know if there's any comment, but I guess my question was, as long as the person who or persons who asked these questions were provided with the answers as well, it's all well and good for council. But if they've asked a question, they're entitled to an answer on it.
Yes, by virtue of this report being on an open agenda.
Okay. So.
I move that council receive the report regarding budget meeting unanswered questions.
Seconder, okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The assessment roll adjustments, the purpose is to inform council of changes in assessment values that will affect the current year. Staff recommendation is that a motion that council receive the report. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Parks and Trails parcel tax bylaw. Purpose to introduce bylaws related to the Regional District of Nanaimo parcel tax for regional parks and trails, which increase the parcel tax by $1 per property. And it's my understanding that at the present time, the charge is $12 a property on a parcel tax, and it'll be rising to $13. And the motion is that council receive the report on that.
So moved.
Moved, seconded, no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bylaw, and we'll move into the parcel tax roll preparation bylaw 2013 number 7164 to provide for the preparation of a parcel tax roll. Now, do we want to do them seriatim, or should we just?
Bylaw 2013 number 7164 pass first reading.
Okay, second. Okay, all those in favor?
Your Worship,
okay, go ahead.
I'd like to speak on it. I can't vote in favor of this simply because it represents a 30% increase over 3 years. I just want to make that known.
Okay. So, Councillor Beswick, you made the motion and it was seconded. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion, Councillor, McCabe opposed, balance of council in favor, the motion passes.
The parcel tax roll preparation bylaw 2013 number 7164 pass second reading.
Okay, second, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed?
And
Councillor-
that parcel tax roll
Oh,
preparation.
just one sec. Councillor McKay opposed. Balance council in favor. The motion passes. Go ahead.
And that parcel tax roll preparation bylaw 2013, number 7164, passed third reading.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McKay opposed. Balance council in favor. The motion passes. Regional Park and Trail Parcel Tax Bylaw 2013, number 7165, to impose a regional tax, regional parks and trails parcel tax. And so there's three more motions.
Your Worship, I move that Regional Park and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw 2013, 7165, pass first reading.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kay opposed. Balance council in favor.
That Regional Park and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw
Passes.
2013, number 7165, pass second reading.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McKay opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion passes.
And that Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw 2013, number 7165, pass third reading.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. Sorry.
Your Worship, I just wanted to say on this bylaw that it includes $1 increase to every parcel in the regional district in order to add to the fund to purchase regional parks when they become
It's a
available
specific
to
purpose,
us.
yeah.
So it allows us to act quickly.
Yeah. Good, okay, good point. Very good. Good clarification. Okay, so I think the third one has been moved and seconded. Okay, and well, but did you vote on the third one?
Yes? No, we didn't.
Oh, I thought
All in
we
favor?
had clarification before. So all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kane, opposed, balance council in favor, motion passes. We'll move into number 10, community service. Did we get all of the other items? I just want to look over at someone who's going to look up and acknowledge me over here. Yes. Okay, thank you. So, community services number 10A, minutes of the Parks, Recreation, Culture Commission meeting held February 27, 2013. The commission recommendation is that the motion be passed, that council receive the minutes.
So moved.
Seconder, move and seconder.
Your Worship?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Kett.
I have a couple of questions,
Yep.
if I can, through to the, either Parks and Rec or the Chair. On page 113 in our agenda, item 8A, staff reports, it says extend Diana Krall live site operation agreement. What does that cost us or anything, or is there just an agreement or with the DNDIA? Because not much goes on at that live site, so I don't know what we're managing with it. And we've handed it off to be managed because we weren't getting a lot of stuff on there. I mean, we couldn't get Olympics and stuff up on the screen, so if I can.
Mr. Kenny, this is going to Mr. Hardy? Yeah.
I'm not sure if I hit the right button. Did I get it?
Yeah, no, you're on.
Good. The intention was exactly that, Councillor Kipp, is to find, through your worship, was to get more use. And so the DMB is trying to program both the site itself for events and also the live site itself. So trying to get more events on there.
Do we have a cost attached?
There's no cost for the DMBA to program for us, but the maintenance cost every year for that whole site is consistent.
Maintenance.
We still pay that, yeah.
Okay, and the next one, the Western Canada Championship is coming up. Gate share. I thought we were renting and helping with the facility. Now we're sharing the gate? That's.
Yeah, Your Worship, under the bylaw, it allows for staff to negotiate fees. And as we reported to you a couple of months ago, we entered into agreement with the Clippers that would have them pay a minimum fee and then a percentage of the gate over that. I can't remember the exact number, but it's actually, I think, quite a good deal for the community. The minimum is really quite high, so there's not much money at risk, but there's a positive impact for the hockey team and a potential win for the community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to Mr. Howard. I just wondered, we're dealing now with this item down in D, but I think we still have two other ones to clear beforehand, do we not?
Your Worship.
Can you do all the same at one time then?
Your Worship, you're still on receiving the minutes.
Yeah, well, that's where I was at. I just wonder how we jumped down to D and the Clippers. I'm sorry, the Buccaneers on that list?
No, I
Was that
asked
your
for
question?
information. My question was on the
On
minutes
the
of these
okay.
two issues.
Okay, sorry. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The cultural grants process and criteria review to be introduced by PRCC Chair, Councillor Johnstone.
Yes, The Commission's recommendation is that Council approve a call for the review of the cultural grants process and criteria as part of the cultural planning process, and that a recommendation regarding the review be included in the plan. And this criteria is, it would have to go with Council's legislation as well, and it's a little premature at the moment. We'll be looking at that for the 14 to 17 plan. And Councillor
No, not
Patch.
really anything to add to it, other than council approved the going on of the cultural strategy, and this belatedly is going to be folded in with the cultural strategy. So it's more of formality than anything else.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Into Service and Resource Centre Indoor Art Selection to be introduced by PRCC Chair, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, Your Worship. The purpose is to approve the permanent art selection for the Service and Resource Centre as per the community plan for the public art process. And Commission's recommendation is that Council approve the selection social mixer by Mark Ashby for the Service and Resource Centre indoor art competition.
Okay, are you moving on?
Yes, I am. I'd like to speak.
And you're seconded?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Just for clarification on this one, this amount that we're looking at was incorporated in the budget already, Mr. Kenny?
Yeah,
So it's not going to be an additional cost?
No, it was included in the itemized budget for the Safe Service and Resource Centre. We can speak, if council would like, to the process that's gone on and the criteria that have been used in this selection, if council would like.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have no doubt, looking at that building, that it needs some work as far as greasing the walls. But the idea of selecting a single piece for the entire budget is beyond what I would consider to be practical. So I can't vote in favor of it.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, did you have a comment? And then Councillor Pagé.
Well, yes, Your Worship. Briefly, and then Councillor, the Chair of the Cultural Committee, would like to speak to it as well. There were 14 submissions, Councillor McKay, shortlisted to 3, and 1 was the final selection. It's a large wall mural, and it's part of the community plan for public art, and it supports the integration of public art and makes it more welcoming, attractive and inviting for the visitors to the centre, contributes to the cultural vitality. So it's an important piece. Fred?
Well, you've stolen my thunder. Since Councillor McKay said I can't vote for this for one piece, and I was just going to say it has 1,847 separate little pieces that are, being put together in a very innovative way, and that will liven up that hallway to the extent that it needs to be. And and it was in the original budget of the Services and Resources building, so it was approved.
Okay, Councillor McKay, are you going to go again?
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that this is just the icing on the cake for this particular building. There's enough raw feelings concerning this building, how it came to be. This, whether it was right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. This, in my opinion, a single piece of art for $15,000. I think we can do a lot better than that. I think there's lots of places all around Nanaimo that we could do, that we could showcase throughout that building for $15,000. And I just think it's a slap in the community's face.
Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Your Worship. This isn't in the main lobby, or this isn't is this a feature? I assume this will be a feature piece, but is it on the feature wall? Is this on the mantle of the fireplace, or?
Mayor Tan, in answer to Councillor Beswick's question, we don't have a fireplace, but as you walk in the main entrance, it is on the feature wall, and you would be able to see it from the outside likely, but definitely as you got into the main entrance, you would see it.
So just from my perspective, when I walk in, I see the counter, like all the working counters when I walk in, and then to the right on the way to the washrooms?
Yeah, that wall. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions at this point. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillors McKay, Councillor Bestwick, and Councillor Kipp opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion passes. Moving into Junior B Hockey Club, the Nanaimo Buccaneers. Construction and lease of a dressing room at the Nanaimo Ice Centre to be introduced by PRCC Chair, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Purpose is to obtain council direction for approval in principle for the construction and lease of a private building at the Nanaimo Ice Centre. And Commission's recommendation is that Council approve in principle the Nanaimo Buccaneers Hockey Club building, a dressing room at the Nanaimo Ice Centre, with the understanding that the city's contribution to the construction and maintenance costs would only be the land via a park lease agreement, and also to direct staff to draft a lease agreement for Council's review and consideration.
Okay, is there a seconder? I'll second it. Seconded. And discussion, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. My only comment is that I don't believe that this space is large enough, and that you'll get one opportunity to do this. I haven't clearly been involved in the process. I don't know if there's more space available to them or not, but I suggest that this space is not big enough for what their future needs and opportunities would be. So I'll vote in favor of it because I'd like to see it happen, but I'd like to see that if there's an opportunity to amend it, to be increased in size at a later date if deemed necessary.
Okay, can I just ask staff, has this issue been brought up by the Buccaneers? Are they satisfied with the size, or does this appear to be a problem?
Your Worship, through the Council Bestwick, the size is what's proposed by the Buccaneers. Tonight, if Council does approve the project in principle, we can take those points back to the Buccaneers as we draft the lease agreement and as we work through the other processes. And if they feel that they can make it bigger, or think they can make it bigger, I think part of it is based a little bit on the financial contribution, what financial abilities they have to build this building. But we definitely take that back to them.
Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Bestwick. I know when they brought this forward at the Parks and Rec and Culture Commission, I basically said, go big or go home, so make sure you get it big enough. So maybe once they hear all this, that they'll make it bigger.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into the bylaws with no accompanying report, 11A, motion that the highway closure and dedication removal portion of Meredith Road adjacent to 1720 Meredith Road, bylaw 2013 number 7163, be finally adopted. Seconder? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I hope this is the end of that one. It's been back and back. There's correspondence here not related to a report to council. 2 letters are shown there. Would somebody like to move receipt of the correspondence? Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, and now we'll go into any business arising. Councillor Patchy.
With regards to the letter from Mr. Waite, the chair of the Board of Variance, with regards to I think it was the placement of heat pumps. I would like to ask staff what they believe we can do in that regard, if anything.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that staff will work with the Board of Variance, and the first step I believe we should do is work on some sort of educational program with both the electricians and the installers to ensure they understand what we're trying to achieve and how we're achieving it before we take any other actions, before we would recommend amending the bylaw. So that would be what I would recommend council authorize staff to do, is to go out and do an education program.
So you need a motion for that?
Your Worship, yes, that would be fine.
Okay, then I'll make that motion, if you'd wordsmith it for me, to contact the Board of Variance and to start an educational process, something to that extent.
Yes.
Mr. Howe, can you read back the motion for us here? No, I'll give you a minute to get that done. So you've moved that, and is there a seconder for that? Oh, you did, I'm sorry. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now, council appointments, none, and notice of motion number 14, Councillor Bestwick.
Just wish to make a notice of motion that I'll be bringing forward the in-camera meeting times be considered changed to 5 or 5:30 p.m. on our regular council meeting nights.
Okay.
Your worship?
Yep.
I'd like to give a notice of motion that I'm going to bring forward on forming a protective services or a public safety committee.
Okay.
Could be for the next meeting.
Okay, did staff get that as well? Okay, and now we'll move into 15 other business. At the regular meeting of council held 2013, March 25, Councillor Brennan advised that she would be bringing forward the following motion for consideration of the 2013 April 8th regular meeting of council. That staff be directed to prepare a report providing an assessment of the city's current heritage tax exemption program to ensure that it is up to date with current legislative options and to evaluate the processing of these types of applications in terms of equity and efficiency. And so you're moving that, and moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, opposed? Motion carries. Item 15B, at the special open committee of the whole meeting held 2013, March 27, Councillor Kipp requested the following two Union of BC Municipalities, UBCM, resolutions be brought forward for consideration at the 2013 April 8th regular meeting of council. Motion 1, UBCM 2012 B87, Canada-European Trade Union Agreement. And motion 2, do you want to do these seriatim? Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, actually, I think Councillor Brennan has some alternate motions to this, if I could speak to them.
Okay.
Do you want to put those motions on the floor?
Well, if you want to maybe give the background on your thoughts.
Do we need a
and then
motion
I
before
have-
that, or?
Well, we're on actually motion 1 now, dealing with UBCM 2012 B87, the Canada-European Trade Union Agreement, I think. Councillor Brennan, go ahead.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah.
So would these would substitute for these two in,
Okay.
so,
Do you want an explanation first?
Sure, that's
I think
what I
if I
meant. If
could,
you could
if
put
I
it
could
into
be indulged.
context.
Sure. Basically, what this is through the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, we had some motions come forward about the Canadian-European Union Trade Agreement. And the key purpose here is to look at government procurement and the procurement rules and look at investment protections related to transit, water, electricity, other public services delivered locally, that they won't be locked into privatization is one of the key things and the key issues. And it's to help us source locally to use public spending, tax dollars spent where they are raised, for tools for economic development, environmental protection, and the support for local farmers and small businesses, especially with the way these are written, and for our local businesses. So, Councillor Brennan, if I can indulge you to give us some.
Sure. This it is a series of 5 motions. I have them here for the rest of council and for staff.
And they actually overview both. They overview both.
They
and
do.
yes.
They actually address everything.
Yes.
And if you like, I will read them out. They actually, if you want to look at your emails, you'll find that Paul Manley with, I'm not sure where he was coming from, Council of Canadians perhaps, but he made these suggestions. So these are the motions. That, and I'll do all 5 and look for a seconder after
second
5.
them.
City Council asked the Province of British Columbia for a clear, permanent exemption for the City of Nanaimo from the Canadian European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, and City Council asked the federal government to protect the autonomous powers of the City of Nanaimo, to create local jobs, protect the environment, and provide services and programs as it sees fit from any restrictions to those powers in the CETA And City Council asked the federal government to further exempt from the CETA any municipality that so requests, and City Council encourage and support the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in its work with the federal government to change the terms of the draft CETA to protect the autonomy of municipal governments, and a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Christy Clark, Premier of British Columbia, the Honourable Ed Fast, Canadian Minister of International Trade, the Honourable Pat Bell, BC Minister of Jobs, Tourism and Innovation, local MPs, MLAs, Union of BC Municipalities, and Federation of Canadian Municipalities, requesting their consideration and support.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Two for you.
Now, that, just for clarification, Councillor Brennan, that replaces motion 1 and 2 of ours, okay? A substitute of both of them. Okay, so that done, we move into number 16, question period. These are agenda items only.
My name is Dan Appel, 940 Hackett Street, and my question has to do with the conference center, and I wasn't too clear on whether that was part of the agenda or not. I wasn't too clear on what question to ask, but I'd like, if I could be indulged, to make one brief little statement before I ask the question. And I wanted to say that I think, and I've observed, that the staff of the conference center has done a wonderful job of maintaining it and selling the conference center and doing just an exceptional work in very tough circumstances. And I wanted to acknowledge that and put it on the record that I appreciate their effort. My question, and I put it down in two forms because I wasn't quite sure if I'd get there. I wasn't quite sure how to ask the question. But I was wondering if the conference center is creating a demand for hotel rooms, then why hasn't the private sector responded by investing in either renovating hotel rooms or building a hotel on its own? I guess that would be the one question.
Are you suggesting that the Vancouver Island Conference Center should answer that, or I mean, you're dealing with the conference center, which is, you have to understand that's administered by Adlific. It's a contract for operation with them.
But
so I don't know if it's something council.
I believe you are trying to get investment. The council and city has been trying to get investment in the hotel industry. And I've got all kinds of reports that the conference center has been creating demand for hotel rooms. And I'm just wondering why they're, well, I guess the question would be, you know, the conference center has this list of objections as to why people aren't coming here. Do you have a list of objections for why people aren't investing in hotel rooms?
Your Worship, I can respond.
Okay.
And that just by saying that while I think that the conference center is doing a good job of generating hotel stays, the private sector investors that actually have the money want to wait and see it generate more and feel that it's not enough yet. So that's one of the reasons why staff are advocating continued support for the business and building the business, because we believe that as the business grows, eventually that demand will be clearly demonstrated to the people with enough money to build a hotel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, okay. Sure. This is on the agenda, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's about the Vancouver Island Conference Centre too. And the question's probably not what you're expecting. But it seems to me, I was very interested to hear the presentation tonight on this building. And I noted that if it's costing the taxpayers $1 million a year, that's $3,000 a day. And I heard a presentation that was quite interesting. I'd make a suggestion to the lady that made it. There were two words when she was talking about the true value of the conference center, And in the quotations, there were the two words, sucked in. And she might want to delete those from the presentation, because someone who is not as charitable as this audience might be, might take those the wrong way. And I think those two words should be eliminated. This is a tremendous building. And as I was listening to it, I heard it said that, and there is a question in here, I heard it said that the conference business is seasonal, and that in July and August, there's virtually no business at all. And I'm wondering if, this building has been here for 5 years, and I'm wondering if there is any effort or thought given to how this building, which is an excellent facility, how it could be used to promote Nanaimo as a tourist center. And I'm thinking that I'd like, first of all, to present to do a presentation, a delegation to you in 2 weeks' time to suggest how this can be done.
Okay, well, you could just talk to staff to arrange that.
Just in brief, when you have a fixed facility like this, which has fixed costs
Okay, sorry,
associated...
Mr. Circle, just remember that basically what we're doing is a question period.
Is there any plan at present from either staff or the on council
to change it from its existing
or
purpose?
in the building itself? Is there any specific plan to use this facility to bring tourists to Nanaimo and to keep them here? We have 1 million visitors coming here every year on our ferries. I didn't hear any mention of that at all. It's a tremendous market, and if we could just capture 5% of that 1 million people and bring them into this building and show them some of our history, our culture, our natural history, all our wildlife, we'd not only educate the visitors, but we'd be able to educate the people of Nanaimo
Well,
too.
you know we have a museum downstairs.
Not the same thing at all. I'm thinking of a much larger facility along the lines of the Royal Alberta Museum in Edmonton or the Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller. You see, we're thinking about a hotel which could cost $100 million. I'm thinking about an effort which could be done for a few $100,000. And I just wonder that, you know, if this building hypothetically belonged to any one of the people in this room, you'd be looking very hard at any opportunity to increase their revenue. In private industry, if the performance of this centre...
And I think we are. I think we're trying to look at ways to maximize the...
Well, I'll make
But
a
you've got to remember,
presentation to
the
you
Port
2 weeks
Theatre
from
has to be subsidized, the Nanaimo Ice Centre has to be subsidized, the Nanaimo Aquatic Centre has to be...
But
these are amenities that we offer the community.
Suppose I suggested to you that you could double the number of people coming into this building in the next year.
Yeah.
or
Well,
certainly
if you
next
want
year.
to, you know, we're all tired. We've been
Would you be
it's been a
open to
long,
that?
long meeting. If you would like to come as a delegation and make a presentation, sir, by all means, that's the way to do it.
I promise I will not take as long as Mr. Nielsen did. How's that?
We're holding you to that. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my sir. Okay. And seconded. Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.